Guys, I hope you are ready for this. Oh my gosh, right out of the gate, it's going to mess up my beautiful face here. I cannot believe that I'm out of focus. Eric, help me, bud. There we go. There we go, guys. We got Eric White of 815 LSX Swaps in the backstage right now. He's coming on as a co host. Y'all, this episode is going to be wild. We're talking to Brian Lohnes about putting together the Dork-O-Motive podcast of the 1992 Hot Rod Streetcar Shootout. Then we jump into what we found on the official buy-sell trade partner of Drag and Drive, the Racing Junk Classifieds. Then we're going to spend the last hour talking about Finnegan's Garage Hot Rod Drag Week experience in Blasphemy, the entire series, the 4+ hours of video that they put together with the man himself, Mike Finnegan. Y'all, before we get started, for those that don't know me, my name is Mike Narks. I'm the host of the Drag and Drive show, Drag and Drive News, and co-founder of draganddrive.com. I eat, sleep, and breathe this community. I love the Drag and Drive community. On this channel, you're going to find stats, stories, and the lists of events that make up this crazy sport we call Drag and Drive. Now, let's bring in the co-host, Mr. Eric White, and let him tell you who he is.
What's up, guys?
Dude, hey, while you're doing that, I'm going to go down through these comments and I'm going to put them up on the screen. And I want to encourage everybody to, while we're doing this, please share it. Please hit the like button and make sure you make comments throughout and ask questions.
Heck yeah. All right,
dude. Tell them who you are, man.
So I am Eric White. I am the creator of 815 LSX Swaps, and we do different kinds of LS swaps. You can see the two cars in the background here, my twin turbo Fox body Mustang and a LS 240 SX. And recently, new logo up there across the top, just started Motorsports Paparazzi. So to try to keep my LS swaps content separate from our event coverage, we started a whole new page. So we're going to kind of run two channels simultaneously.
Dude, I'm so excited about that for you. One, because we know what that is going to bring. Your LSX swap stuff has been amazing. So we know that you being out and about, and that's going to help us on the Drag and Drive side because you're going to hit Six Summer for us while I'm doing Autocross Week. Dude, it's going to be nuts. 2023 is going to be absolutely crazy. All right, man, there's so many comments here. Why don't you run the comments on the bottom? I'll talk about what we're going to do in this show and get us going. All right.
Sounds good.
All right, guys. So I want to congratulate all of the 2022 Drag and Drive racers that have received their decals. I have put together a video, but I did not load it onto StreamYard here, so I apologize. Guys, thank you so much for tagging me in all the pictures. There are more than 85 people that have received their decals and posted on social media. I cannot thank you enough for doing that. That is a huge sigh of relief. We spend a lot of money to get those, and I spend a lot of time writing out envelopes. All that handwritten stuff is me, myself. All right. It's great to see that these are bringing joy to you guys. I really hope that I see a bunch of them at Sick Week, because I'll tell you right now, I'm going to be a goofy little kid when I see these things in the wild. I'm so excited about that. And I hope that it becomes a great conversation starter for you racers that have them on your car while you're at the track, or, like what we all do, putting gas in our car, driving it to the gas station, or driving it to the grocery store, driving it to get ice cream, doing burnouts, things like that. I hope these decals bring some attention to you from other spectators and people around the area or around your area. And it allows you to talk about Drag and Drive. That's what the entire purpose of all of that stuff is. So, Eric, should we remind them to share and like the post again? Because listen,
and
we have
remind the Facebook users.
Oh, yes. So if you see the name Facebook user here, that means they're in the Drag and Drive Addiction Facebook group. If you roll down to the bottom of the description of the video, it will allow you to give StreamYard permission to use your name, much like the Hargett Performance team has, and a lot of those guys. So I see a lot of the comments rolling in here, guys. Here we go. One thing that we talked about last week, if people haven't seen that episode, is how many events or how many tracks the Drag and Drive events will hit during 2023. We talked about it being 38 during 2022, and we're going to hit at least 60 different racetracks during 2023. Now, you had wondered how many tracks are there in the States. So, of course, we had to go to Google. We had to find out. So, apparently, in my light Googling, Eric is definitely our archaeologist for Google, so Googleologist to find stuff. But I did find that there are more than 420, according to an article written last year by Dragzine, and that number is backed up again by Drag Illustrated. So, you think, I mean, we're still over, I would say, I think it was like 428 on one and 423 on another. So I think we probably got to be at least mid fours still open today,
Fix your face.
Dude, every time I look away from the camera, man, this is so funny. That's the next shirt that's coming out is fix your face, fix your face. All right. And then last week I was on the Monday Morning Racer Show. I cannot thank him enough for letting me come on there and talk about the drag and drive movement that is coming with Going Bracket Racing and American Hot Rod Entertainment. It was a great show. If you guys haven't seen it yet, Monday Morning Racer Between the Slicks episode from last week. I don't remember what the number is, but I did see Monday Morning Racer in the comments earlier. Maybe he'll give us a episode number there as well. I will say it was really cool talking to Casey from Going Bracket Racing and his interest in drag and drive. I really feel like that's our next big wave of participants are the guys that already have street cars that only go to the racetrack. And Casey said that his car is built to go to drive on the street and do this kind of stuff. He just had never had because he had never been close to it. So I'm hoping with the number of events we have for 2023 and just the explosion of information that's coming, we'll have a lot more people come in because we don't want the same people competing at all of these different events. Obviously that gets it watered down. So when you have a chance, definitely take the time, go to your local track, enjoy an evening of racing and all that kind of stuff. Make sure you're talking to people about the fun you have on Drag and Drive. Dude, do you want to do this next little topic here? Because this is really cool. This part here.
Yep.
Yep. Let's let you do that and I'll jump into some of the comments here.
All right. You got to fix your face again, though.
God, dude, it's ridiculous, man. It's going to be an ongoing joke. There we go.
So, quick tidbit. Go watch the Clutch Burners podcast with Rich Guido and Bill Armstrong. So episode 10, guest Lonnie Grimm said that NHRA is working on a rule set that the street racer drag and drive class will like.
Yeah, it's Lonnie Grimm's interview on there was amazing because his conversations that they were talking about is all really fun stuff and all the racing that he's done. But I don't know what they have in mind, but the street racer class is the 850 class for all of the events. So it's going to be interesting to see what NHRA has planned. And does that mean they're kind of dipping their toes in this stuff over here? Are they trying to see who wants to come see what? You know what I mean? Who wants to race at what level?
Yep.
All right.
And then
yep.
Beginning next week.
Do it, dude.
Beginning next week, we'll have Sick Week competitors on to discuss their vehicles and strategies for the event. So if you plan on attending Sick Week, comment in the chat or down below and let us know if you want to come on.
Yeah, definitely let us know. My intention is to message Cameron Thorpe after this and have him be one of the first guests because, as everybody knows, I've been preaching. He is the only drag and drive racer to complete and compete in 4 national drag and drive events, which are 4+ day events and everything like that. So, I mean, it's 1,000 miles worth of driving. He put 11,000 miles on his car last year, on his car and tow truck last year, just to get to and compete in events. So drag and drive helps the entire, I guess, ecosystem of drag racing because we're buying trailers, we're working on trucks to pull trailers, we're driving around in our cars with high octane fuel in them and things like that. So, all right, what else we got here? This week's guest,
cool. Chris Photo going to be Chris Story going to be taking photos at Sick Week. That's going to be good.
Dude, he's going to be so tired of me. I'm just going to hang on his hip all week. I think that's he comes up with the best pictures, but also is generally right in the middle of the coolest stuff. So if you are in the Oklahoma area and you want some amazing pictures for your car and yourself, definitely the Chris Story Photo. Got to hit him up. Instagram, Facebook, all that kind of stuff. Dude, did you see who's backstage Do you see his
I
backstage?
do.
Man, it's exciting. It's exciting. All right. Well, I think it's time we probably tell them who all's on and go through that, and then we'll bring on Mr. Brian Lohnes. All right, guys. This week's guest, they're pushing the drag and drive community to the front. I'm telling you, Brian Lohnes is a household name in NHRA and the drag and drive community. Mike Finnegan, obviously, we all know who he is from from shows like Roadkill, Finnegan's Garage, Faster with Finnegan, all that kind of stuff. But before we jump into having Brian on, I want to thank Sweet Patina for their support and their continued rejuvenation, I guess, into Built for Drag and Drive segment in the news. Guys, we have our first recording of it coming up this weekend. And I'm going on site with Jonathan Stonecipher. He is going to be our first garage visit for that episode. I'm so excited about doing that with him. He is the reason I am in this. Guys, make sure you visit sweetpatina.com for any kind of cool swag, any kind of car care products. They have all kinds of stuff, not just patina things. Use the code DND57 at checkout when you do it. That helps us. It also helps you save money, but it shows that their money is being spent in the right ways with their sponsorship. All right,
I'll
guys.
tell you what, my favorite sticker: go fast parts before paint.
That's right. It's my favorite shirt too. Their shirts fit just right for I would say husky dudes like myself. So our first guest, Brian Lohnes, host of NHRA on Fox, announcer at Hot Rod Drag Week 2022. Loved the buttery voice he has on there and the voice and mind behind the Dork-O-Motive podcast. Brian lives and breathes drag racing. I think he does more drag racing commentary than I do. But he has an uncanny way of presenting facts that simply draw you in and keep you mesmerized, even when he's talking about locomotives to car guys. You can find him at the links down in the description that will be up here momentarily. Let's pull him on and let him tell more about himself.
Hey,
Dude,
guys,
what's up?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on the show. This is cool. Really cool.
Man, I'm excited to have you on. I think just the conversation that you had with all the racers is going to be amazing moving forward into the future as we see what you have coming and just all the stories that came out of that. I mean, I loved it. I've listened to it like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, it was great. It was a really cool show. It took way too long to make it, and it's like any sort of thing. I had this idea of what I wanted to do, and I had no ability to do it. Like I'm not a professional editor or anything like that. So I really wanted that show to be the guys that competed in that 1992 hot rod shootout race to be telling the story in their own words. And it's like I had probably 12 or 14 hours worth of interviews, and I went through and clipped them all and everything, and then you try to basically stitch it together like you're kind of, I don't know, making a quilt or something. I'm so easy. I don't do anything around here, but it's like it took me a long time to get it right, and I'm glad people enjoyed when it came out, because when it was done, I was kind of like, okay, this is the best I could do.
Dude, hey, I'll tell you, you knocked it out of the park. And guys, I'm going to ask you right now, please share this out so we can, because we're going to jump in. We're going to ask you about putting it together. We're going to ask what's coming up in the future and things like that. So let's jump into it. Let's see. Tell everybody where all they can find you, because I think I hit a few things, but dude, you've got a ton of stuff coming up for 23 too.
Yeah, so bankshift.com is a website that Chad Reynolds and I founded back in 2008. Still work on that basically every day, and Bankshift has been around the drag and drive stuff really since we've existed. Bankshift has been a part of drag and drive. We had I think a pretty good role of getting the early days of Rocky Mountain Race Week publicized and getting rocking and rolling back in the day too. So that's been very cool. And Dork-O-Motive podcast, the NHRA stuff. You can find me on Instagram with just my name, Brian Lohnes. So yeah, it's good. This is a fun time of the year for me, because it's obviously a ramp up to get ready for the NHRA season, and really, I'm doing the U.S. Street Nationals in a couple weeks. Was supposed to be down at Donald's race this weekend, but he moved that race out. So a lot of guys still have their stuff taken apart. But yeah, I'm looking forward to 2023 for a multitude of reasons, and I'll be at Sick Week too in a couple of weeks. So it's going to be great. Yeah.
I'm excited to see you there. Well, just a quick recap of Brian or Eric. Do you want to move through some of our topics from last week, and then I'll take over in the middle there?
Yep. So we're going to do a quick recap of the podcast, real high level here. So that is 2 hours, 2+ hours, discussing the history of that 1992 Hot Rod Magazine Fastest Streetcar Shootout. there was 13 plus drivers that were interviewed. Plus, you got spectators and magazine editors in there. Topics included how the event was started, how the racers heard about the event. So it's definitely very cool and a very good listen. If you haven't listened to it, make sure you do.
Yeah, I think one of the coolest things about it was, you're obviously tying it to drag and drive, and I think the Danny Scott story saves the day for Max Carter and then Ken Anderson. I think that was a really cool part there, just showing like those guys are in the pits, or telling you that those guys are in the pits fixing the car so they can compete against each other. And then, Ken had the heads off of the car replacing a set of rings. That's crazy. That's what I heard the third time I listened to it, that I didn't catch the first two. And then without Danny Scott, Max would not have won the race.
And that's a fact. I mean, it's an absolute fact. And that is, what I think was neat is when you hear Roger Connolly, talking about, man, they had the rear end out of the thing. I mean, and it's stuff that, today in 2023 now, we think nothing of watching a guy. I remember back in the day, Todd Mashmeyer's story when he was out there, they basically tore the front end off of that Camaro one time, hitting this crazy. We went over a bridge on one of the things, and the car was so low, I think it was a cross member hit the bridge, and he ended up welding this thing kind of back together in a field or something on the side of the road. And so the stuff that happens today, you think, oh, well, a guy welded a rear end up in the pits, that's child's play. But back in 1992, it was just a different world. People back in the day would have just thrown the car in the trailer and gone home. But this whole mentality started to build from that point forward. And listen, Max Carter was spectacular as a guest on that show.
Yes.
And the amount of stuff I could have run, but would have had to just have a complete string of bleeping noises was unbelievable. But when he told that story about Bill Weckman and the alcohol Corvette, it's like, I have to put this in there.
Yes,
I have to put this in here. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great part. I think at that point, everybody surely got in behind that dude. We're going to do whatever they could so that guy was racing.
It was fantastic. And just being able to talk to Rod Sabry and really the one miss I had on that whole thing, and I tried like hell to get him, was to get in touch with Joe Pettit, because Joe Pettit is still alive and he lives in California, and to the best of my knowledge, he works at a university out there. And I went, kind of full on private investigator mode to find him. And I contacted him a couple different ways, and he didn't get back to me, and I wasn't going to make it a federal case to try to find him. But I really would have liked to have had Joe's voice, in that show. And I just want people to know it wasn't for lack of trying. I didn't just blow him off. He was, unavailable to comment. But it would have been cool to have him, Freiberger, and Jeff Smith all kind of telling that story from their individual perspectives.
How cool, man. Well, there's some comments here. We got Capone, obviously Scott Brown saying maybe Brian will tell my piston swap story from 2014 in Tulsa.
Yeah. Okay. So Scott, was it Tulsa or was it Great Bend? Because my memory of this was at Great Bend, but yeah. So he had to put a piston in the motor, and there was like this guy in a tow truck that was like lingering around, like as a shark goes around a guy in a diver's cage. The guy's got his, whatever seal flavored underpants on, and the shark is going around in a circle. Like that's what this guy in the wrecker was just waiting for Scott to give up. And sure enough, he basically finished the job and flipped the guy the bird and hopped in his car and off he went. So again, it's one of those great moments from this event and this style of competition. And that's what people take out of these things. It's way less about, to me anyway, when I've enough of this that I've seen, it's way less about the ability to say, oh, well, I finished second in class or I finished first in class, which is amazing, but it's better to be able to carry that story with you for the rest of your life and tell your buddies and smile about it whenever you're, having a down moment. You can remember a really good time. So yeah, it's so important.
Yeah. And then getting back on the road and finishing the event or getting to the next step, getting to the next place. So, well, dude, the reason you're on today is obviously the Dork-O-Motive podcast. I love it. Like I said, I've listened to it, I think at least 4 times. One of those was for research, but the other one was because I love it, dude. There's so much commentary there. I think it was really neat. So we definitely want to know, Eric, if you want to kick us off with some questions, and then we're going to kind of rapid fire these things at you.
Go for it, man. I'm here.
I'm kidding. We'll have a good conversation. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Beers and a microphone. I'm ready to go. It's all good.
Perfect.
Awesome. First, Mike, you got to fix your face, man.
Dude, I'm telling you, like that's going to be the running joke all night. My webcam has hated me today. Every time we were on, I'm going to make a shirt of it. Fix your face. So,
all right.
I'll be in and out of focus through all night.
So why don't you go ahead and let us know, how did you even come up with the idea to do this podcast?
The idea for this, the 30th anniversary of that race was, was 92 was when they ran it. So I wanted to, and I did. I just snuck it under the wire. I did get it done in 2022. So technically, I did keep it in the 30-year window. But I really honestly think it came up in a conversation with Freiberger. Like, I was talking about a bunch of stuff and kind of concepts I had. And I said, man, it's like, it's been 30 years. And we kind of started putting the timeline together about, the effect that event kind of had on the way people perceive streetcars. And then, they come back and add this driving portion of it and expands and grows. And so I was like, I wonder how many of those guys are still like around. I know Stan Shaw had died, and this happens over the course of 30 years, people kind of fall off the face of the earth. But sure enough, I start beating around the bushes of social media and I start picking these guys up one by one. And it's all of a sudden it's Steve Johnson. And next thing you know, I got Billy Edwards, and I'm like, holy crap, I got most of the top 10 here. And that really was, that was really the genesis of it. But it was a conversation with David, that it seemed like this is a really good idea. I thought people would want to hear it. And then immediately when I started thinking about it, was like this idea of having their voices tell the story.
Yeah.
I think that was awesome. And then how long did it take to put this episode together? And I'm not talking about just like editing, because we know that's hours and hours and hours, but like the research, the finding out, then the contacting and all that kind of stuff.
It was, that part of it probably took me a month and a half probably to get, talk to all the guys. And then it was some follow-up conversations where I would get some questions and I think, man, I need to get back with this guy and that guy and do that kind of thing. The problem was, and I'm fortunate, and as a guy who's kind of makes his living doing creative things, if you will, I'm fortunate that I don't normally get in a situation where I have some sort of a creative block. I always like cringe when people say, oh, I had a writer's block. And dude, it happened to me. It absolutely happened. And I started and stopped this thing and scrapped it like 6 times. Wow. And I would get halfway into it and I would think, this is garbage. And it was like, and so I set it all there. It was all sitting there on my computer and I just had to park it for like a month or two. And I came back to it. And I'll go back to another conversation with David. I said, man, I'm sitting down. I was like, I got to do this. And he's not a man of inspirational speeches, but I can tell you, he said some things to me that got my ass in gear. And it really was one of those things. The finished product you heard when I started to make that show, I made that after all those months. I physically created the show in about 7 hours. I did it in like 1 7-hour stretch where I just said, screw this, I'm going to work whatever all the way through the night to get it done. But that was what it took. And so it sucks that it took me that long to do it, but it wouldn't be what it was if I didn't take the extra time.
Right. Dude, I can't imagine putting something together for that long, but we're glad you did. How many total people did you say you interviewed for this whole thing?
I think it was about a dozen. It was about a dozen. And I think, I want to say it was like 12 or 13 that you heard on the show. Now there was probably a total of like 20 guys that I called and got, background information from here and there. And what's funny is the thing could have continued to expand and expand. And it's like, you're talking to some of these guys and they bring up somebody's name, like Kurt Urban's name came up. And it's like, oh, I got to call Kurt. Like, Kurt's a great guy. I got to get to. But then I had to put the brakes on because I'm going to call Kurt and then Kurt's going to tell me a story. I'm going to have to call this guy. And next thing you know, the show's never going to get made. So there is certainly way more, like any story you're telling, there's way more depth you can go into. But at some point, you got to just like stick to the program. And that's kind of what I tried to do.
Yeah, for sure. I can't imagine trying to do that. Somebody over here asked, do you have the ability to do ride-alongs during sick week? I would think that would be very difficult just because of the timing that you have.
Yeah, I mean, it's typically, I historically have not gotten a lot of ride-alongs. I've been able to do a lot of ride-alongs only because, we have to be there till the last cars run down and stuff like that. But also, it is more of a, I don't know, it's more advantageous for guys like me and Freiberger that are going to call the race to be driving on the road and stopping and seeing people. Mm-hmm. It's like if I'm doing a ride along with a guy, which I'm sure would be really fun, and this dude's like, hey man, like if I don't run this car at 65 or 70 mile an hour, it's going to boil over. We need to get going. And we're blowing past 6 or 7 great stories of guys that get their cars yard sale that I should be telling the audience about tomorrow. It would stink to miss that stuff. So is it possible? It is possible, but it comes with its drawbacks, I guess.
Well, and that's so I've got a rental van for Sick Week for that reason because I'm like I rode with a racer in Midwest Drags and was slash pit announcing. And so as you run through, and you're like, man, okay, we're on the side of the road. We're fixing our own stuff,
Yeah.
dude. We got to go, man.
Right,
We
like
gotta
I
go.
gotta get to work here. Yeah.
Yeah. We got to do stuff. We don't want to be here at 2 a.m. me working on this car. You know what I mean? So
yeah, it's a balance, man. It's an interesting balance, and it's people always ask David, like, are you ever going to race at Drag Week? And I think in my heart of hearts he will at some point someday, but he always says, I have more fun announcing it, this and that. But I think eventually he'll do it. But we talk about all the time, it's like if we didn't kind of do our separate thing and stop, we would be missing all these great stories.
Yeah, for sure. And that's what you get for the next day. Eric, what do you got next there, bud?
So how hard was it to gather information for an event that happened 30 years ago?
Believe it or not, it's not that hard because the event was covered by Hot Rod Magazine. That provided a great framework. I got a huge collection of vintage magazines here at the house. I use it for a lot of historical research. So I had their magazine coverage. They had I had the NMCA magazine from that time that had a little kind of stuff in there, and so that really was. Those stories really provided about an outline, right? And the other thing I wanted to make the show about was less about what happened, round by round eliminations, and more that overarching event feel. Did you understand how big this was at the time? And so that's why I didn't go into a lot of the like minutia of like, oh, this guy ran 890. I used some of the audio from the VHS tape that was released at that point to kind of tell that part of the story. With Bill Stevens as the announcer, who was also an NHRA, lead announcer over the course of his career. But so to me, it wasn't that difficult to find the information. And once I got these guys talking, I mean, that was it.
Yeah, you're like, okay, I gotta go. Got these 5 questions.
Yeah, us car guys can talk a long time.
Well, we're not scared. Though. Only about cars. In my history as a drag racing announcer, a lot of times you walk up to a guy and if they get their eyes like get all big, what do you want to talk about? It's like, I'm not here to talk about gun control or abortion. I'm here to talk to you about your race car and drag racing, which I think are two things you enjoy. So I think this has got to be pretty easy, and that tends to loosen guys up. Yeah,
that's right. So you said the racers have kept racing from then on. Are there any that have competed in drag and drive events? The only name I found was Jeff Dean was the only name between then and that. That was on 2016.
A lot of the guys have attended at their local track when a drag and drive event, whether it's Drag Week or whatever, has come through town. But really, Jeff Dean's about the only guy that's gone out there and actually competed. Dave Lemon builds race cars, and he's built stuff that has competed on the drag and drive level. So he has that kind of level of interest to it. Obviously, Mike Moran has, built a bunch of motors and stuff that have gone out and done stuff over the course of time. But most of them are still racing or involved in racing to some way, but not many of them have done the drag and drive stuff as a competitor.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. But at the same time, those guys still go very fast, and they drove their 20 miles or towed their 20 miles for that event.
Yeah, and you got to think of it. I mean, it would be 12 years before drag and drive, as it was known, was actually created, right? So think of your span of your own life. Like you look back at your own life 12 years ago, what you were doing. You're not doing what you're doing 12 years ago. At least most of us are, So I think if you're, especially guys that are racers, and in that very specific style of racing that just evolved so fast. You heard Ken Anderson, I think, was probably one of the most, and Billy Edwards too, were two of the most vocal of the, like, this kind of sucks now. And they don't like where it's at. And listen, I respect their opinion, because to me, I respect any racer's opinion because they've done it and I haven't. I may not agree with it, but I respect what they have to say. And so I think a lot of it is a little bit of that kind of resentment too of, this thing's gone to a place where it never should have gone in terms of how wild the cars are or whatnot. But it was cool. It was cool to talk to those guys and just to understand kind of where their head was at.
That's awesome. And then real quick, Darcy, I see 102 people on right now. So, I mean, that's a big number for us. So we appreciate it, Brian.
That's great. I'm glad you guys have me.
Does anybody still have their car that they had or that they raced in 92 that you know of?
Yes. And so there is so much spare audio from this show. It will not be in the next 2 weeks, but I'm going to release some addendums and some follow-ups to this show. And so I know who has their jackets still from that first race. I know who has their cars still from that first race. And there's a lot of great stories around that. And again, all the stuff in my mind of including it in the main show, but I would have now had a 4.5 hour something show. And at some point it becomes unmanageable. So I figured these could be some postscript chapters, but yes, you will be hearing about who still has their cars. You will be hearing about who still has their jackets.
So
That's awesome.
You led right into my next question, which is
Okay.
perfect. So you mentioned having that additional unused footage. Was that just additional topics or just extra questions that didn't get discussed or just overall conversation in general?
It's some of all of it, really. I mean, so the way I tried to make this somewhat organized on my own behalf was I created a list of questions that I asked every single person the same list of questions. And so that allowed me, when I started to build the show, I had some sort of a linear kind of timeline of, I could pull these answers out and kind of build along this line. And of course, over the course of any interview or conversation, you're going to have these cool sidebars and sidetracks. So some of the stuff you heard in that show was not anything I asked about. It just would come up in conversation. Mike Moran telling the story about the fake shifter that had been in the car for years. And Kurt Irvin's like, dude, this thing's going to clutchless 5-speed in it. Why do you even have that automatic shifter there? It's a great story. It's like, I've known you for 5 years and you've been jerking my chain the whole time. It's great. So yeah, the runoff, if you will, the extra stuff just simply came from people that gave, and a lot of the times the stuff you heard too is I would use a portion of a guy's answer. I didn't necessarily use their entire answer. So, there's some more behind the scenes stories I can tell. Rod Sabry's got a great one about stealing a street sign and making an air pan out of it, which I actually think I included that one, but it's a great story.
That's awesome.
So I kind of think I have an idea on the answer for this, but what was the overall feedback of the people you interviewed? Did they enjoy bringing up this event and having those conversations all over again?
They did. It was two elements. The feedback, the conversations, most of them really enjoyed. The other element was none of them really knew what a podcast was. And so like Max Carter, up until the release of the show, was like, dude, when are you gonna publish this story? I was like, well, it's Max, it's an audio thing. He's like, well, you're writing it down. I'm like, unless you listen to it and write it down, no one's writing it down, Max. It's your voice. And Max is like, oh man. It was like, well, yeah, I told you this from the beginning. Some guys just didn't kind of get it. But yeah, it was they loved to kind of relive those stories. And I thought it was important to include some of the guys like Billy Edwards that were like, I'm never doing this again. Like, you guys screwed me over. And I because that's honest. It's dishonest to think that every single person left there going, yay, like this was the greatest day of my life. No, guys left and they were pissed off and they were sad and they were mad that they lost and they were annoyed. And that all needs to be part of the story, because otherwise we're just doing a rah-rah thing, which is not cool. But every one of those guys, when I hung up the phone, was happy to have thought about the race and happy to have thought about that time in their lives, which I thought was really fun.
Yeah.
Well, what's next up? Like, when are we gonna get a 2005 Drag Week story about this? Is this future stuff to come?
So I can tell you that, yeah. I mean, and again, I always try to vary the topics up, so I will move to some other stuff and kind of rotate the universe back around again. But having been personally on that 2005 Drag Week, that is definitely one that before 2025, that one will get made. I'm not doing the whole 30-year or whatever 20-year thing again. But yeah, to me, the 2005 Drag Week experience needs to be shared, especially in this modern context of what drag and drive racing has become. The amount of guys that showed up to that thing just by themselves blew me away. It blows me away in the context of today. Like, dudes were just there with their car because their wife had no interest in driving that smelly loud thing around all week. What are you, crazy? You're going to break down anyway. I don't want any part of that. So, it's a different, and I'm not saying it's better or worse. I'm just saying back then it's the old adage of you don't know what you don't know. And there was no right way to do this back then. That's the coolest part of any historical look at drag racing at any era or any class. The coolest time frame in that era or class is when nobody really knows how to do it right yet, and everybody's just trying things. And you know, it was funny. I was talking to a guy. Obviously, Ken Block passed away, which was very sad a week or so ago. And I was talking to a guy, and I said, I've ridden in two cars in my life that I will never ever forget. And one was I got to take a ride with Ken Block in a rally car, which was unbelievable. But the other one was at Drag Week in 2005. I got to ride around with Larry Larson. It rained,
Wow.
and that was when he had the pink Nova with the Lenko on it and the big blower on it. And it rained on Friday. And so he wanted to get a set of spark plugs, and I had struck up a friendship with Larry over the course of the week. I was there as a reporter for Competition Plus, and he was like, "You want to go for a ride to the parts store?" I was like, "Hell yeah, I do." I mean, this is the craziest freaking thing I'd ever seen in my life. And off we went, and going down the highway, and we made a pull that was like triple the speed limit at one point, and it was just the most insane freaking thing in the world. And that's still what this is all about today, which I think is the coolest part.
Yeah, it's interesting to go back and look at all of the times and things like that about, because we have all the Billy Gebhardt stuff. So like go back and look at 850 car won that whole event.
Yeah.
And then that dude never competed again. Like you win the first one, you're like, nope, not coming back. That's the kind of stories I think that would be really neat to.
Oh yeah, and listen, Carl was in Bowling Green. He melted the pistons out of that thing, and they sent a guy off to somewhere into God's country to go get him a set of pistons. And again, this was something that just didn't happen in 2005. Like we all left. We were going to National Trail the next day, and it was like, well, sorry for your luck, pal, but I'll see you. See you never. And the neatest part of that, again, every part of that race was neat. Every part of that week was neat. But he got there just before the cutoff in the morning, and the very small number of people that were there, which I think there was about 40 cars or so in that first one, he pulls in and everybody freaked out, like in a great way. Everybody is in this little group of people in this drag strip where there's no spectators. Yeah. Like that's the other thing. The other crazy thing about that week that you have to think about is that there were 40 cars going into these drag strips and nobody else.
Yeah. Because it was a morning format then too, right?
Yeah, but it was also something no one ever heard of before.
Yeah.
It was a one-way trip. Everybody forgets that part. It was a one-way trip. We started in Kansas City and ended in Minnesota, or rather in Michigan, and you just had to figure out how to get your stuff home from there.
Man.
Oh, wow.
I think that's the next I think we need that to come back. I think
one-way trip
like a streetcar only. No trailers, baby.
Like Route 66, drive Route 66 or some portion of it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But that was a funny thing. Like the event got over and a bunch of us were actually, I didn't even get to stay to the end because we got delayed that morning. I had to fly out of Grand Rapids that night because I think I had something to do it to get home for. But, those guys then looked at each other and went, I guess we're all driving back to Kansas City now. And off they went. Yeah.
Yep. How cool. And then Red Hat Scotty here saying he was at Kansas City in 2005. That's pretty neat, man.
So Red Hat, if you were there, you remember Justin Burcham in the Mustang blowing a literal 360-degree donut. He launches the car off the starting line, like grabs second gear, and this thing spins 360 degrees around the middle of the racetrack. He drives it back up, pulls it back around again, stages it, and then makes a run.
How cool, man.
Yeah.
That's so fun. That is so fun. What else we got here, Eric, for me? What do we got? Ask about the next episode related to Drag and Drive stuff. And then
obviously I had a question here too in the chats. I don't know if you saw that one.
It was Brian, will you build your own car?
Oh man, so over the years, I am into large, old, slow trucks. I have owned a 1968 C50 Wrecker. I've had a 65 2-ton truck with a pickup truck bed on it with a 292 inline six with a 4-speed. I currently have a 1940s 8-end tractor that I'm working on. I got a little, basically a stock displacement flathead that I'm going to put in it. So I don't know. I listen. I love drag racing. I drag raced with my dad for 5 years. I went bracket racing with him from when I was 16 to when I was in my early 20s. I do not have the skill to build a fast drag race car. I don't have this. If I could build a street car that would simply make the driving portion of a Rocky Mountain Race Week, I would be the happiest guy in the world. I do not have the acumen to build a competitive fast drag and drive car. So the answer is probably not, but I will revel in watching everybody that has done it in racing.
So here you go, Mike. Tell them what's the class to go in. It doesn't have to be fast, right?
Yeah, I mean, dude, it doesn't matter what it is. Just get out there and do it.
Do it.
Yeah. I mean, I think a 12 car is the way to go if you're doing it for the first time for sure.
Oh yeah,
Let's talk about co-pilot and pilot, and then we'll let you do what you're gonna do. Get back to your regular life here.
yeah, sure.
When did you see kind of the shift from it just being a co-pilot to now suddenly, hey, let's make it a dude's week and go out and do, like Tony Angelo said the other day, adult camp?
That to me started really, I think that, and it's like that was a trickle down effect to when, the quote unquote unlimited cars like really got hardcore, is when you started to see a little more of the dude week scenario. And it was always David and those guys would always break out in hives about this, oh my god, they got crew guys and they're doing this and they're doing that. But in reality, it's like you cannot necessarily prevent, like, listen, if the guy if his buddy enters the event in another class, you can't legally stop him from working on his helping the guy out in his car. I mean, I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say, but to me, the dude week element really began to kick into full swing when things started to go really haywire with the outlaw, like the unlimited style cars.
Yeah.
And I mean, Carl Scott, it was Carl Scott and Troy in that car in 2005. And look, they were ahead of the curve on a lot of stuff with that car that people may not realize. In that, they would roll up, they would bolt the windows back in it, they would swap the center section of the rear end, they would swap the complete intake manifold off it. They ran the car down the road with a single 4-barrel on it, like just a regular, I don't know, it was the Victor or whatever on this motor. And then they would yank out of the trunk this massive freaking tunnel ram with these Dominator carburetors on it and all the nitrous plumbing, and put it all together. It had a one-piece fiberglass nose on it. It had these little tiny, like Duracell flashlight style headlights in it. And none of us thought in a million years that he would finish the week. Like, he went out there the first day and ran somewhere in the 8s, and we were all just blown away. Phil Cooper, you can't forget Phil Cooper that week too. Phil Cooper there was many Novas that week, but Phil Cooper had the black Nova with or the purple Nova rather, with the flame job on it. And Phil was a very strong competitor. And we all put our money on Phil to a degree because of the fact that Phil's car was more tame, and it was not nearly as quick as Carl's car, but it had a much more sensible setup for getting itself down the road. But we thought for sure that there was no way that Carl Scott was going to make it to the end of that week. And there he was. And the other kind of asterisk on that week is the low ET of the week was set on Friday by Larry. Larry put a smaller pulley on the blower at the end of the event to see how quick he could go, and he went 838. I think the speed was about 160. But yeah, to me, and just to double back around, Larry raced had a guy with him. Carl had a guy with him. Cooper had 2 cars there, so his buddy was driving the second one, so they were kind of a tandem. And Justin Burcham had another guy with him, and those guys, they worked so hard. It was an early, I think it was a 3-valve Mustang he had in that thing, and it was in the early days of those, when those cars really first came out, and he was actually getting engineering support from guys at Ford, because he had a centrifugal on that thing. Maybe he was making at that time like more power than anybody had made out of one of those motors, and he was just ruining parts like left, right, and center, just ruining things. I think he finished the week. Steve Morris blew his car up on the first day at KCIR and came back, and actually they let him make exhibition runs, and this was the station wagon. He blew it up on the first day, came back and made exhibition runs on the last day with us there at I guess Michigan. Yeah.
That is too cool. Well, I want to ask real quick, and then I want to do this question right here. So let's do this question first from Kevin Jackson. Where are we going for Drag Week this year? Come on, man.
It is absolutely within the continental United States. I will narrow it to that landmass between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, within south of the Canadian border, north of the Mexican border.
Dang. Okay, cool. Yeah. Well, I will tell people, because I know that is a question that is asked all the time of us. I will have Keith Turk on eventually. Yeah. I just know that the Keith Turk conversation is 3 or 4 hours, and you're probably going to need an energy drink in the middle to keep up with that dude. So he will be on. Don't worry. I just haven't figured out when the 4 hours I have to bring him on.
Listen, I was business partners with Keith Turk. You don't have to tell me. He and I were owners of the Ohio Mile back in the day. So I can give you all the good. When you get ready to talk to Keith, come to me and I'll tell you where the bodies are buried there. I'll give you
That is perfect. All right. And last person I want to ask you about is Steve Eden and Pete Holm. They drive a yellow, like 70 Nova. These dudes have completed every drag week that they've entered since '07. Love those guys. Talk to them. They both have like jitterbug phones. Nobody takes pictures of them or anything like that, but
Yeah.
it's the coolest story. And they're coming on in a couple weeks as well.
Well, it's great. And ultimately, look, those are the guys that are the backbone of these events, whether it's the Midwest Drags, whether it's Rocky Mountain Race Week, whether it's Drag Week, whether it is, I mean, what are there now? 19. I think I saw maybe an Instagram post. You made like 19 separate drag and drive events this year.
Mhm.
And that right there is the guy that is loving every second of his adventure on the event. And he's there for his own reasons and to go out there and have his own experience and do his own thing and make new friends and, you know, have this kind of social element. And one of the things people don't give enough credit to about this drag and drive scene is that it takes down a lot of barriers that keep people away from the drag strip, and it gets them in there because they can feel comfortable. They don't feel like they're going to be embarrassed if they don't have the fastest car on the property or whatever. They can get in when they fit in, do their own thing, whether it's the guys week element of it, whether it's just going out there to see part of the country, or whether it's going out there and showing that you have the baddest street car in the world. You get to pick how you do it, and that's what makes it so fun. And it's what makes it fun as an announcer too, because you don't treat those guys in the Nova the same way you treat a Tom Bailey. You know, Tom Bailey is there for reasons that are very different from what those guys are doing. So, you know, you celebrate their successes in a different way.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's such a cool community of people that really, I mean, everybody wants everybody to finish. I think that's one of the biggest benefits and joys of covering this kind of stuff is that everybody is literally willing to give parts off of their car so somebody else can, or out of their trailer, not off the car, out of their trailer, so somebody else can make it.
It was the most amazing part of that 2005 week was, even though I was there as a reporter, by the second day, it was like, we got to make sure everybody gets to the next stop. I mean, it was like a light switch, and it's been that way ever since. And it doesn't matter how big or small the event is. It is that esprit de corps. It is that camaraderie. It's that whole idea. And it's so much different. It's a lot like land speed racing, which I know a lot of guys aren't that familiar with, but land speed racing, most everybody that goes to like Bonneville is kind of on their own program. You know, you're never really pitted against the guy you're quote unquote racing against. So you have this immediate camaraderie, this immediate, like, we're here for the same reasons doing a separate thing. So I'm no threat to you. You're no threat to me. Like, how can I help you? And that's exactly what Drag and Drive is like.
That's awesome. Ryan B says that he walked into his house and his drag week jacket came today. That's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, man. We talked to Ryan. I think Freiberg and I were having face first and some Dairy Queen ice cream when we were talking to Ryan at that stop when guys started doing insane trailer burnouts and the cops showed up. So it's always a good time.
That's great. All right.
Somebody bleeds, and it's not a party at Drag Week until the cops show up for trailer burnouts. Yeah.
That's right. All right, dude. I promise this is the last one. Here we go. So, all right. Who taught you, or where did you learn all the deep in the woods facts that you know? Yeah.
I always joke with people that I didn't, date a lot in high school. So I spent a lot of time reading drag racing magazines and stuff. Now, look, I'm fortunate in that I'm a very curious guy, and I try to learn as much stuff as I can. And, I get an entry list for Drag Week a couple of weeks before the event, and I start pouring through it. And whether it's makes, models, and years of cars or stuff like that, it is definitely it's definitely the fun part of the job, is preparing to have that stuff kind of in your back pocket.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Sorry, my kid was bringing out a water for me.
Oh, nice. A little water, a little hydration.
Yeah, man, I was going to do some beers, but she won't bring me a beer. So
I can recommend Smithwick's Red Ale. It's very tasty. That's an unpaid endorsement.
That's awesome. Well, hey, send them your way. It's kind of like Yingling with Lyle Barnett. Can we get this dude some beer, please? I'm
just going to buy it to give it to him to shut him up. I'm enough, Lyle. Enough.
I think that's the plan. He's like, hey, somebody's going to send me some Yingling. Hey, dude, I want to say thank you for coming on. I hope this won't be your last time to come on. Obviously, this long format stuff I love because it allows you to tell in-depth stories and things like that. We obviously do a weekly show that's like 30 minutes. It's like hard-hitting stuff. So as I dig deeper in the Built for Drag and Drive segment this year, sponsored by Sweet Patina, I'll probably reach out with some questions for some of the racers that have built cars or builders that stuff like that,
Yeah.
your brain is so full of the Rolodex of drag and drive,
Yeah, sure, man.
drag week knowledge. It really helps. I think that's what we're going to see this next year is the growth of the sport from a standpoint of like getting some respect from all the magazines. And, Wes Buck has talked about drag and drive now in every episode for the last 6. So I think we're finally starting to see some traction come from it, so that's always a plus.
That really is, and I think it's a great scene. I think it's a great element to the sport and the industry. And the one last thing I'll leave you with is a lot of people are like, "Oh man, it's like you're an NHRA guy, and they let you do this and that." It's like if you don't have drag strips that make enough money to stay open, you don't have a sport.
Yeah.
And so these are the types of events that are bringing people into the grandstands. They're bringing people into the racetrack. They're bringing other people. They're bringing guys who don't drag race to drag race their cars on Wednesday and Friday nights to get them tuned up to come to a drag and drive event. So, the spidering effect of this and the amount of parts they buy for the industry and blah, 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 blah. It's a great thing that's going on. Thank you for having me. Definitely don't hesitate to reach out. And I think at least once, probably more than once, you're going to see some drag and drive heroes at NHRA national events this year. So stay tuned.
Yes, that's exciting. That's exciting. Well, dude, thank you so much again. I really do appreciate it. You're more than welcome to hang out backstage, and then we'll have Finnegan on here in about 20 minutes, and then we can go from there. So you're more than welcome to hang on. If you want to jump on and make fun of stuff, you can just wave your hands a little bit. Keep it that way. I know you're a busy guy, so you definitely don't have to do that. But thanks again. Tell everybody where they can find you. Obviously, if they don't know where all of your social and all
sure.
that
Instagram is probably the best spot. It's Brian Lohnes, just my name, BrianLoHnes. The Dork-O-Motive podcast is what we've been talking about tonight. The latest episode is about the 1992 Hot Rod Magazine Fastest Streetcar Shootout, but you can listen to episodes about a guy named Broadway Freddie Dename that raced funny cars and killed 150 people for the mafia. You can listen to episodes about stage train wrecks, about the history of how the NHRA really wasn't the biggest sanctioning body in drag racing and pulled a fast one to become one in the 50s. There's all kinds of great history about cars, trucks, mafia people, you name it, I got it.
Dude, it's amazing, man. So thanks a bunch.
You bet. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Man, what a cool dude. Like, just the knowledge that guy has is really amazing when you think about all the stuff he's seen, but then retains all of that. That's the struggle I have is I don't retain any of that information. I can't pull 2019 or 20 events right out of my head just like that a lot of times.
Yeah, and he's pulling up things that happened back in an 05 event. And
Yep. Yeah, it's pretty neat. I do want to thank everybody. I mean, we're over. This is by far our largest episode yet. I want to thank everybody for the comments that you're making in the chat. I love it. I will say we are live across about 6 different channels with Facebook and YouTube. So we're even live on Twitter right now. So a lot of really cool stuff. We're not done yet. We have another hour. We have Mike Finnegan coming in about 15 or 20 minutes, and we're going to discuss the 4 hours of his drag week life. So obviously we talked about Brian Lohnes last week. I had reached out early and said, hey, can you come on? Unfortunately, our wires got crossed. He thought it was this week. So, hey, I'm glad he came on this week. I really appreciate that. I think it was a lot of fun. I think hearing his stories, it definitely will not be the last time he comes on here. But we do have Mike Finnegan on here shortly. So, see some folks saying hit the like button. Definitely appreciate that. And if you will, share it out, guys. This is our stepping stone. This is how we take drag and drive mainstream. You guys are the way for us to move forward with all of this. So, dude, we kind of hinted at it last week, but let's do it this week. So let me kind of read the intro, but we need some help from folks. Found on Racing Junk isn't the name we're going to stick with, but guys, I need some help with it. This will be a segment that we cover, I don't know, monthly, bi-weekly, something like that. I spend a lot of time on that site because I dislike Marketplace a lot because it's very difficult to sort through and get your area and all that kind of stuff. So Racing Junk Classifieds has stepped on. They are now the official buy sell trade partner for dragandrive.com. We appreciate them coming on board and to help us grow our brand through a media share agreement, which means we'll talk about some stuff they've got. They'll talk about some stuff we got. certainly appreciate the opportunity that opens for us, because it also means we'll get to attend more events and shows this year because of that agreement, and how they can help us get into certain tracks and certain events and things like that. Our main focus, guys, is to provide you with a huge classifieds, I don't know, listing, classifieds ability, I don't know, of parts, cars, RVs, trailers. Everything is at your fingertips. Here is what I think Racing Junk can do for the drag and drive community, is exactly what we're going to talk about later with Finnegan. Is, he was looking for a Hemi to replace it. Maybe there was one on racingjunk.com within a 200-mile radius that could have had him, maybe he could have bought it there and brought it over and swapped it in. So I see he is down below. Sir, if you'll hang tight just a second, we got to cover some cool cars that we found on racingjunk.com classifieds, and then we're going to bring you in, bud. So, dude, you want to start us with what car you found?
Sure. Let me go ahead and present here. I will share my screen. There we go. So for all of our drag and drive people that maybe don't have a car or are looking for a new project, we have a 1979 Malibu Drag Week roller. So 16.5 for this. We can kind of take a look at some of the pictures here.
Yeah, if you don't like a G-body wagon, there's something wrong with you, I think.
Absolutely. I've been saying for a while that my next build will be a wagon of some sort, and a G-body would make a pretty good project.
Yeah. Yeah, and 16.5, where's it at? Is that New Jersey on there?
Yep, New Jersey. This car completed drag week in 21 and 22,000 miles, trouble-free, runs 930s with pump gas. 604 big block is what was in it. Obviously, it's a roller now.
Yeah.
Rust-free body, 850 cert, frame notched, 10-inch rim with a 275 radial. Has all the interior panels, including a back seat. Mosier.
Somebody get this dude a commission on this thing, man. Come on, dude. That's awesome.
Mosier 9-inch with a strange modular center section, 373 gears, 33 spline.
So it's got it all. It's ready. It's ready
Yes.
for your
Yes.
powertrain. We definitely don't want to keep Mike Finnegan waiting. So let me show you mine real quick. I found the one and only Michael Westberg's S10 roller. Y'all, this thing is in Florida right now, $30,000. You can own it. You can own the fastest truck in Hot Rod Drag Week history, and see what else? 4th quickest overall, and this Hot Rod Drag Week small block record. Tons of cool stuff. $30,000. I think that's probably a deal. I don't think he wants to ship it back to Sweden. So that is in Fort Lauderdale, guys. 30 grand. I think that's probably a really good deal. All right. Let me get out of this. Yeah, dude. I mean, that's such a cool setup. And anytime you can grab that and roll on. So let's jump down to the Mike Finnegan stuff. All right. If you don't know and you haven't seen the 4 hours, you need to do that. That is your literal homework from last week, was to watch that video or watch those videos. It's a 2-part full-length documentary. Mike Finnegan, Tony Angelo, and their and Blasphemy's Hot Rod Drag Week 2022 experience. I'll tell you, the first 3 minutes, you're hooked. Just put it on the TV in the living room and make the entire family watch it. The first 3 minutes, I wrote this note here. The first 3 minutes of video are actually months in the making. So you need to go back and watch all of Mike's previous videos. But guys, this is a real life account of what a drag and drive event is for a lot of competitors. One of the great points of this series is Mike and Tony were able to do the work and not worry about capturing the footage. I think that was a big part of it too. I feel like this level of editing and videography is what will propel the drag and drive community to the next level. So we want to say thanks to him before we bring him on and embarrass him. But there were a few really neat parts. So I want to let him introduce himself, and then let's jump right into kind of our favorite parts, in the section there, and just go from there, man. All right, dude, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing good. How are you?
Man, I'm excited. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. We had Brian Lohnes on. It was crazy. He was talking all kinds of drag week stuff and drag and drive history. And then you're Mr. Drag and Drive history as well. You got a ton of that stuff. You've been on them. You've competed in them. And I don't know, man. I'm excited about this. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah, I'm psyched to be here. Thanks for having me. And
Yeah.
I'm jealous you got to BS with Loans, because the only time I ever get to do that is when I run into him at events. And like you said, his total recall memory is just mind blowing for somebody like me who has literally no memory of anything. Like,
Dude,
yeah.
me and you are the same. I'm like, I've got to really be thinking about what happened then. But him and Freiberger, man, it's just like boom, boom, boom all the time. It's amazing.
Yeah, Freiberger will tell you he doesn't have a very good memory, but his memory is incredible. Like, I remember stupid stuff. Like, I can tell you the speaker wire coloring, for the right rear speaker in a 78 Monte Carlo, but I can't tell you what clothes I wore yesterday. Like,
yeah. Hey, what you're saying is you remember the important stuff. That's
I don't even have
thing.
Monte Carlo. Like, it's utterly useless to me. And I don't have a plan to get a Monte Carlo, but I know some of the answers.
But if you needed the speaker wire, you could do it for a concourse restoration of the 78 Monte Carlo.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. Well, I think one of my, I said it in the intro there. I think this video series was really one of the coolest things that we've seen come out of all of the drag and drive coverage, because a lot of times it's more of a vlog style. I feel like this was really shot from a documentary feel. It had a lot of that, they were capturing you guys in the moment. And in some of those shots, dude, there's like 5 cameras inside.
Yeah, that is not me at all. Other than I had the forethought to bring my friends with me, who coincidentally are the same people that film Roadkill and Faster with Finnegan for Motor Trend. And so we know each other really well, and they've been on Drag Week, they've been on Rocky Mountain Race Week with me, and so they knew what they were getting themselves into when they came to Drag Week. And so they knew. I told them, I'm like, it's either going to go really well or we're not sleeping. And they pretty much didn't shut the cameras off, which is the worst case scenario for whoever's editing it, which by the way was Chris Reed, one of the guys who filmed it. And
good luck to that dude.
Yeah, we went there with the goal of, all right, we're going to do a daily vlog and just update everyone on our progress throughout the event. And we almost pulled that off. We almost had a video every day during Drag Week. But the problem was, when it went sideways, we didn't get really to sleep. And so there was no time to edit and upload a video every day. I think we did 3 or 4 during Drag Week. The rest of the time was, holy crap, fix the car, And so when we were all done, we had like, I don't know, 20 or 30 hours of footage. And poor Chris had to go home. And when it was all done, I was like, this would be a pretty good movie or something. Let's just do something better with it than the 15-minute clips we put up during Drag Week. And so Chris spent, let's see, that was September, and we dropped it Christmas Eve. So October, November, he spent like 3 months editing it.
Yeah.
While doing all his other jobs,
Yeah.
So.
I can't imagine. It was really good. And we've got some questions around it. Obviously, Eric made a comment here, said at the minute 14 at part 1 at time 14:28. So a lot of people ask me for advice on how to be successful at a drag and drive event, and I'm really good at giving it, and I just can't seem to follow it.
Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah.
I tell you, here's the hardest part about drag and drive that people that are on the outside world don't understand. You're literally trying to build your car to go the fastest it possibly can. You don't have time to maybe get it together and running and spend 2 weeks or 3 months driving it. So,
well, yeah, I think you have to be retired and independently wealthy to actually be fully prepared for Drag Week, because my life is not any different than anyone else that goes to Drag Week. I was working until Drag Week started, and believe it or not, my job is not to go test blasphemy. It's just not. And so the reality of what was happening leading up to Drag Week was, I didn't have the motor until I think 2 weeks before the event.
Wow.
And
Wow.
that was nobody's fault. It was just we couldn't get parts. Like I had already committed to bringing the video crew, and so we were going. We were just
Yeah.
like, as long as we get the motor, we will go. And but the problem was I got the motor, threw it in the car, drove the car around the block, and then I left town to go film Roadkill. And so we filmed an episode of Roadkill where we road tripped David Freiberger's Gremlin to Drag Week. And then
Nice.
and then what I thought happened was we got to Drag Week and that car went on a transporter back to California where he lives. That's what I thought. And so while I'm filming Roadkill, David Newbern, who worked for me at the time, took my car and a group of Aussies to Mooresville to chassis dyno it. And so I'm getting random texts during the Roadkill shoot about the car being on the dyno, and nothing's going right. So those guys aren't sleeping. Like we're talking about, Steve-O,
Yep.
Harry Haig, that whole crew is there not only working on their car, but apparently they're also working on my car because
Oh,
nothing's
man.
going right on the dyno. And so they chassis dyno it and it makes pretty good power. And then they load up, go all the way back to Atlanta from Mooresville, North Carolina to pack the Drag Week trailer. And I'm not there for that either. And then they bonsai up to Illinois. And so when they arrive, I've not packed the trailer with anything. And I wasn't there for the dyno session. And basically when we got there and turned the cameras on was when I saw my car.
Nice.
And a lot of people are like, what are you doing? Why are you not tested? And I'm like, what? Yeah, I haven't driven the car in 2 years. I want to drive the car.
Yeah.
It's either sit on the couch and wonder what could have happened, or just, do what you can and try and have as much fun as you can. And so that's how you end up with, at one point I'm saying the binder for all my paperwork is gone.
Yeah.
Well, when I last saw the car, the binder was in it. But during the mad thrash to dyno the car and transport the car and do whatever, somebody took the binder out of the car and shoved it in my tow rig in a spot that I just never saw.
That was one of my questions. Did you ever find the binder?
Yeah. We found the binder after registration.
Yeah.
And when we had to put the truck in impound, that's when we found the binder.
Nice.
So, it's just stuff like that. We got new wheels for the car that looked really cool. Had no idea they weren't round. Like I said, when it was on the chassis dyno, I got a text saying, hey, the car's shaking on the dyno real bad. The quarter panels are shaking. And I'm like, yeah, it's always kind of done that. I wouldn't worry about it. But I didn't know how bad, And
Right.
So when I saw the car at Drag Week, we took the wheels off, took them over to Mickey Thompson, and they just wouldn't balance. We took them they had a static bubble level and the wheels wouldn't balance. Took them to a tire shop. They didn't want to balance. So now oh my God, we need wheels, and with the A gas class, you can't just go out and run a brand new set of billet wheels.
Yeah.
Got to be period correct. And I'm lucky that Mike Cotton, my co-host on Faster with Finnegan, lives not too far from the track and had my old wheels. And so I'm rambling at this point, but this is everything that was going on on registration day. We made a car, it hasn't gone out on the track, and everything's gone wrong,
It was pretty wild, dude. I'll tell you, let's jump into some of those questions, because the story that comes along from this 4 hours of video is really, I think, should be inspiring to people to do this, but also it probably scares a bunch of people.
Well, I hope that those people, there was a moment in there where I said, a few slightly wise words, which is, go test your car before the event. Find out that your alternator sucks and that your fuel pumps boil the fuel and that, the cooling system is not up to par and you've got voltage issues. Find out all of that before you arrive, but beyond that, just show up, because the only way to know is to go do it, and even after you've done it, like this is my fourth Drag Week, I think, in the same car. And I'm still learning things about this car, that you don't know until you get there.
Well, and you keep making upgrades. That's always the struggle. I want to make this last little bit of upgrade, or sadly you break it at one, then you're so busy it's hard to get back on it and spend the money for the parts because you have other projects. So it's like, how do you get back to that? Well, Eric, you want to kick us off with some of the questions and stuff here?
Yeah, sure. So we kind of talked about this one a little bit already, but were you planning on creating a movie when you went, or were you just gonna film kind of some daily stuff and then ended up putting a movie together later? And how did the idea of that movie even come about?
No, my goal was to make content for the YouTube channel every day to try to break even on going to Drag Week because it's really expensive. And so I thought, well, if we could put up a video every day, you know, and survive and finish, because finishing is always the goal for me, then, you know, awesome. And when it all went sideways, you know, there was a moment on day one where the car's busted and I have an entire video crew sitting here and I'm just sitting there going, oh God, what have I gotten myself into here? You know? And so no, the goal was never to make a movie. It just, when it was all said and done, we had so much footage, and Chris is a phenomenal editor. Like I used to edit everything on my YouTube channel, and I've turned the reins over to him, because when you get something like this and that much footage, I don't have the patience to watch it all.
Yeah.
Plus, I was there. I don't even want to watch it. And so he went through it all, and the amount of stuff that got cut out to get it down to, I think the first episode was a little over 2 hours and the second one was like 2.5. The amount of stuff we cut out just to get it down to where it was palatable, I never would have set out to do that, because honestly, I didn't think anyone was going to watch something that long on YouTube.
Yeah.
I really didn't. And when the episodes went live, especially the first one, because it was Christmas Eve, nobody watched it. You know, like that episode bombed. I was watching the analytics live the first day, and I was like, "Yep, I'm losing my ass on this one." and I don't know what I genuinely don't know what's happened since then. But episode 1 took off, and episode 2, I think, has a real shot of getting 1 million views, which for my channel is massive. Like I don't think my usual videos, you know, a couple 100,000 views, which is awesome, but I don't ever set out to make something that is gonna get 1 million views, because in order to do that in this game, and you guys know this, you've got to be real strategic about it. It's got to have a click title. It's got to have a really good thumbnail. And I'd rather just make the stuff I want to make in the garage, like working on the Cadillac, or, you know, I go drag boat racing knowing those videos won't do well on YouTube because most people aren't into drag boats, but
it's fun.
But you're doing it, and
it's fun.
Dude, yeah, I always tell my kids, my grandkids will be able to see me doing cool stuff. So it's at least a documentation of all the cool stuff I've done.
Yeah, like I have a horrible memory, but thank God someone was around to film most of this stuff.
Right.
Later on, I go, oh yeah, I remember that now.
I remember doing that. Well, how many cameras did you guys use during filming? I mean, it had to be a bunch.
We had one guy flying a drone, and we had 2 camera operators, and we probably had, I don't know, 10 GoPros going at any given moment. And, you know, what a lot of people I don't think realize is I use my iPhone for almost everything. And so my primary camera when I'm in here in the garage and when I'm out doing stuff, it's just an iPhone, you know, and a couple of GoPros. When I brought those guys, we just had more iPhones and more GoPros. And I think they rented a really good tripod, and I think they rented one SLR body and some lenses, but it wasn't like what you would assume you'd see on a real television show or something. You know?
Yeah.
Wasn't
well, and I was meaning like with the GoPros, because dude, there's one shot where I think Tony's driving in that little bit there after the grill, and there's like 3 cameras across the front window and 2 back here and all that. So it's really cool to watch all that. I can't imagine trying to remember to turn all those on and off each time.
I think those guys are way more coordinated than I am, and so they're a lot of times I think they're turning them off using the GoPro app.
And, that's pretty smart.
But there is a lot of times where they'll lean into the car and I'll hear beep beep beep, you know, and then I'll sit there for an hour and not make a hit, and then I'll hear the dreaded beep 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 beep, and you hear them all turn off one by one.
Oh man, no. So what's the story on the wheels then? What's the, you know, obviously you had to struggle with they weren't round, I guess. You said they were square. So what happens with them? You take them to a wheel repair shop?
I honestly don't know. So they're, you know, and I don't blame anyone for this. I think the wheels got built and maybe built in a hurry and didn't get checked. And I think I think the deal is the center and the hoop aren't square to each other. And as far as fixing them, I don't know. I mean,
yeah, I don't know if you
start over, but yeah.
Dang, who wants to do that?
Yeah, well, and the company's willing to repair them. Like they're American Racing Wheels. American Racing immediately called and was like, "Dude, send them back. We'll fix it." I'm like, "All right, cool." Except I've just paid to mount and balance all these wheels and tires.
Yeah.
Now I got to unmount and balance them. I don't have any of the boxes anymore, and I got to mail them back to California. And I'm like, you know what? Let's just put these aside for now, and
we'll do that eventually. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're gonna spend so much in shipping. You're basically buying more wheels again. You know.
Yeah.
So
well, one thing from experience is job assignments. So I saw you on the computer a lot, but the thing that comes to mind is like, do you and Tony have like hey, I'm going to do this, you're going to do this each time, and then the check, because the fuel line comes to mind, right? Because there's a lot of times where people will turn their car up and forget to move the fuel line over, or forget to check, change the ball valve to get into the race gas.
Yeah, we if we back up to 2019, we were kind of in the same position we were on this one, where in 2019 I was on the chassis dyno till like 10 o'clock at night, the night of before registration, and then we got it off the chassis dyno, towed it down the block to Mooresville to the 8th mile strip, made 3 or 4 starting line hits, no lights, no track, no timing system, loaded it back in my ramp truck and drove straight to registration. And Tony was there waiting for me. And so Tony in 2019 hadn't seen the car. We had no checklist. We had no routine. We had no program. We were so far behind. I just threw everything from the shop in the trailer, and then when we got there, it was like, okay, let's reorganize the trailer. Let's leave stuff behind we don't need. And so this was very similar. Tony knew the basic operation of the car because he'd been with me in 2019. But the truth is he lives in PA. We text and talk all the time, but we don't get to hang out and go racing. Yeah. So this year he showed up again, and the basic layout of the car was the same. And what burned us on the fuel thing, as it turns out, and if you watch the very end of the last episode, it was a fuel pump that was undersized for the really rich tune-up we had this time. Yeah. And so it wasn't that we were out of gas. It was that we had too small of a fuel pump, and we had gas in the tank, and it probably wasn't exactly enough, but really the fuel pump is what killed it. And so there's that moment in the episode where Tony's like, dude, the tank is dry. And I'm sitting there going, there's no way in hell that tank is empty, because I put an entire jug in it, and then I put what was left over of the other jug in it. And all we did was put it on the 2-step a bunch of times and try to do a burnout. I'm like, how did we go through arguably 5.5 gallons of gas? And so, we were going through our checklist before the run, and he asked about the fuel, and I said, I put it in last night. We're good. So my fault, not his. But yeah, I mean, if I'm going to give advice to anybody out there doing drag week, and you're serious about finishing and you're serious about winning, prep your car in your garage as if you're about to make a hit with whoever's your co-pilot is, and go through the whole thing, do it and undo it multiple times, because not only are you going to stop from running out of gas, like I probably did, but you're going to be ready for when things don't work out and you only get one hit, or you make a bad hit and have to turn the car around real quick with like 8 minutes to spare. As much as people like to say drag week and drag and drive events are not real racing, you are acting like you're racing. Like,
it's probably harder. I mean, I know it's harder because you're in your car, you have no sleep, you've literally listened to this thing rattle for 300 miles. What is that noise? On the edge, and then you get there and change the car over and go make a full-on hit.
Yeah, like it's definitely harder, especially in that regard. And it's it's a little dangerous because you're out of your element. You don't have your trailer. You're not in your regular pit spot. All your tools aren't there. You're not going to nut. We all like to say we're going to nut and bolt check the car before every pass, but if you've just come through the gate at 150 and the lanes close at 2, you're going to go right in there, suit up, and make a hit after you just came off the highway, which people have done it. I've done it,
Yeah.
And going back to the, having a routine and doing all this before you ever arrive, I can remember 2 instances in Drag Week 2019 where that would totally help. On day 1, it rained. Everyone got 1 pass, So if you went under your cert, you don't even get to turn in a time slip. If you had a bad run, you're turning in a bad run. And on day 4, when we blew up the trans, I put another gear set in that was slightly different than what was in the car. Go out there and it blew the tires off.
Yeah.
I threw the chute and I shouldn't have. And I had to go right back to the starting line, pack the chute in the lanes, put fuel in it, make whatever changes we could. And Tony and I, by that day, it's day 4, we had a routine. We were good at this.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Tony asked you at least 15 times if you were sure you filled the tank.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well,
that's the ones that made it in the film.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, so much stuff didn't. I think the film crew maybe took 1 break the whole time we're there. Wow. And the 1 break they took was at the end of registration day. And was it registration day or day 1? I don't remember. Oh, it was the end of day 1. My ramp truck's an impound and we need to go get it because the track, one person at the track's telling us to get out. One person's telling us we can stay. We know we're out, let's go get the ramp truck. Can't find the keys to the ramp truck.
Oh.
And for an hour, I'm walking that entire impound area and our pit and everywhere.
Looking for the keys.
Looking for the keys while 4 different people tell me 4 different things. Mike Cotton's there. He's like, I heard something metal hit the ground when you guys were going from here to here. So I'm looking over here. And I'm like, well, we went to the snack bar. We drowned our sorrows in beer at one point that night. Tony and I were together at the snack bar. Let's go to the snack bar. I'm looking everywhere. At like midnight, we go back to the ramp truck and we're standing there. Tony puts his hands in his pocket. I hear a jingle. I'm like, Tony, what the hell's in your pockets? He pulls out the keys. None of this is on video.
Yeah. So, and what people need to understand is from where you guys were in the car to impound is 3/4 of a mile at least. At least because there's no easy way to get there on foot.
Yeah. That video crew covered 99.9% of everything, and I'd say 75% of it is in the movie. But there's just stuff that had to be cut out for time and stuff that just that one thing didn't covered. And to me, that was the funniest thing that happened all week was Tony reaching in his pocket and going, "Oh yeah, here's the keys we've been looking for."
Yeah. Brain damage at that point is very apparent because you just have no capacity anymore because you're so tired.
Yeah. Well, imagine being him. You've just flown in and this is an utter shit show. But you're here, so let's just not keep going.
That's right.
You want your Thelma, to your Louise. You want someone that will go off the cliff with you and just not question what's going on. And that's Tony. Tony shows up and he's like, "Well, here we go."
That's awesome.
So just to kind of do a little recap here, kind of leading up to your first pass. So registration, you kind of mentioned you couldn't find your paperwork. You get registered, you get in, your wheels aren't round. Then you get everything ready and you've got, let's see here, what was it? The throttle was sticking, right? Or at least that's what you thought.
Yeah.
Then the burst panel is busted. So you get that fixed. And then your electric fans aren't working. So then you get that fixed. So all this is happening. It's noon on day 1. Lanes are closing at 2. You finally make a pass and you go 956 at 140. In that moment, what were your thoughts after all that stuff that you guys just overcame? Were you just like, okay, finally, now this is drag week, right?
So before I got in the car, after the throttle sticking wide open the night before, the throttle sticking wide open in the pit there, blowing out the burst panel because the throttle was stuck wide open. By the time we got to make a pass, we missed our call for the morning session.
Yep.
I'm wound up. Let's just do this. Let's just, the car's going to go straight. That's what I'm telling myself. Everything works. We're going to be good. But once I'm pretty wound up, but once I get behind the wheel of that car, I don't know what happens, but I'm just like, all right, this is where I belong. I know how to drive this thing. We're good. And it left the line okay, spun a little bit. First gear was fine. And then it was just everything after that was bad. And I didn't realize how bad it was because I hadn't driven the car in so long. I think it'd been 2 years since I was behind the wheel. So when I make the second gear change and the third gear change, I don't necessarily realize it's just not pulling hard. But when I put it in fourth, it didn't sound good and it wasn't pulling. But what's in my mind is you're not going to get another hit today. Just run it out the back.
No.
I did, and I shouldn't have. And unfortunately, I don't know, we upgraded from V5 to V6 at some point. Multiple tunes in the car. And at one point, that car had, long story short, that car had safeties built into it for the
Yeah.
for this. But we didn't have it that day. So,
We just need this thing running, please.
yeah. And
I think
it's
you
nobody's
mentioned
fault.
that was
Not a
bottom
single
of the
person.
list.
Yeah, it's nobody's fault. Not a single person that touched this car over the last 2 weeks slept.
Yeah.
I don't blame anybody. And I pull around the corner and the clutch is in and the motor's not running. And I thought, that's weird. All right. And I thought, well, maybe it blew out the burst panel again. But I go to fire it up and it doesn't go wide open, which is what happens on that deal when the burst panel's out. You fire it up and it just goes to the red line because it's just got this massive vacuum leak under the blower. And it didn't do that. And I was like, all right, well, I can drive it back. At that point, Tony's jogged halfway there, but I get it running. And I'm driving it, and the smoke at first wasn't bad, so I didn't even notice it. And I get my time slip, and then I get to Tony, and Tony gets in the car, and the moment I fire it up, I'm like, there's a little bit of smoke. I don't know what that's about, but all right, we'll figure it out. When we get into the pit, I can see the spark plug tubes are all leaking, and I had issues with those spark plug tubes before drag week. Like, it's not in the episode, but every one of those tubes I was machining and sanding to get to fit back into the cylinder heads. And I thought that was our problem, So we turned the car around and get it ready to run because we do have time. We can make one more. And the moment I fired it up, it was like a damn choo-choo train in the pit. And I went, oh, dude, I've been here before. I know what that is.
Yeah, I like your comment. You're like, I'm gonna change into comfy clothes because we're not making another hit today.
Yeah. I've holed the piston in that car before, and that's immediately what I thought was we've holed more than one piston because it was both sides, and I was like, we're done. And so it didn't even occur to me to compression check the thing, or bore scope. And I didn't have a bore scope with me. I didn't have a compression tester with me, but it didn't even occur to me to examine the motor beyond what I saw because I've holed pistons in that thing before, and that's what it looks like,
Yeah.
So
and that's one other thing too. I tell people all the time, you're not thinking clearly at that point. No. It's like, hey, it smokes. We saw this last time we did it. It had holes in the piston. Rip it out. Put something else in. What do we do now? Yeah. How do we get that done as quick as possible?
Yeah, that's where my brain shifted. Is after about 20 minutes of just sitting here going, all right, this sucks. It was all right. How do I solve this? And we tried everything.
Yeah.
Well, that actually leads right here into my next comment was so yeah, you guys find out the engine's got issues, right? So first stop is Jared Scott. So
it wasn't actually. I think that's how it plays out in the episode, but the first stop was Facebook Marketplace.
Okay.
Which is,
I think Tony was on there searching. I remember that.
Yeah, and it really works out because 426 Hemis are like hen's teeth anymore. And we tried that. What else? We tried. I called somebody else that I knew.
Went to Jared. You called Ryan. I think it was Ryan Brutt.
Yeah, I called Ryan Brutt. I went to Jared to tell him we were out. And then I walked back to the pit and Tony was like
Yeah,
Which
Tony
nice.
went and asked him. That's what it was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
dude,
I don't
Tony's over there like slinging the sales pitch, man.
Yeah, I don't know how it plays in the episode because to be honest, I haven't watched it. But
Yeah, you lived it, man.
But Tony, after I told him, I'm like, hey, I told him we're out, we're done. And he's like, they're out? And I'm like, yeah, they're out. They got a giant hole in their transmission. And he's like, I'm going over there. And I'm like, all right, whatever, dude. I didn't really know what he was about to do. And so he comes back and he's like, he said yes. I'm like, to what? He's like, you can use his motor. At that point, I'm like, no, this is a bad idea. We just nuked one.
Yeah.
And I went over there to try to talk him out of it, but he was into it. And then I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to borrow it. Let me buy it. And we were real good right up until he made the phone call and found out he couldn't get another one for, I don't know, 8 or 9 months, something really,
Yeah, I think
it took
said
me
like
2
6
years to
months.
get mine back together, to get the parts and everything. And so that ended that. And it was going to be so cool because I was on Facebook Marketplace looking for bucket seats. I was going to put 2 seats in the back of that car, and we were going to go have an epic road trip with the guys that have, they've won A-Gas twice, maybe 3 times, Jared and Sean.
Yeah.
And, it was going to be cool because they're actually really good dudes. Like, we talk pretty frequently, and it would have been a fun road trip, but I totally get why he couldn't give me his motor or sell me his motor.
Yeah.
And then I talked to Ryan, and Ryan got in touch with the guy who got a pacemaker in that day, but somehow still wanted to somehow help us out with a motor, except he's a collector and he has a bunch of old Hemis, but none of which were probably going to survive drag week. Certainly not with a blower on it. And then I don't know, a while went by and Freiberger called me, and that was when he told me, he's like, the Hemi Grammy is sitting at Cotton's shop. And I was like, no way. He's like, yeah. And I didn't think it through. So the motor in that car used to be my motor. That motor had a blower on it at one point. But when I had it rebuilt for Freiberger for that car, the rings got changed. The ring gaps got really small. Like, it's an NA deal that makes good power. I think it makes a little over 700. And I didn't know that day. It wasn't until the next day when that thing's dangling and half the parts are off of it that I had made a Instagram post or something showing the 2 cars. Well, the engine builder saw it and he called me.
Wow.
And my friend James Bostic is like, buddy, you can't put a blower on that motor. I'm like, I'm not going to run a lot of boost. He's like, no, you can't run any boost. And I was like, oh, that's good info. Yesterday, it's great info. Today, it's really good info. Yeah. And so once I found that out, I'm like, I'm not going to blow up his motor too. And nothing was lining up. None of the pulleys for anything. Not the crank trigger, not the blower. Nothing was lining up. So
how was that? How was that roller coaster? You think you got an engine from Jared? You don't. Ryan's got a lead, and then that falls through, and then the Gremlin. Like, what was that roller coaster of emotions like?
The whole time I was like, God, I just want to drink, because it was going really good and then really bad, and then it was going even better and then worse, and then the clock's ticking because we're not out yet. I had my time slip, we weren't out, and then it was okay, we're done, we're actually done. And we could have ordered, had we known earlier, we could have ordered rings, we'd still be out, but we could have gotten rings maybe a day earlier than we had. But now I have the guilt and the obligation of putting Freiberger's car back together the way it was. Yeah. And so that burned, half a day right there. Yeah.
So it seemed in the movie, it seemed like all this stuff happened pretty quick, but I imagine, do you remember how long it was from when you had the conversation with Jared Scott till the Gremlin conversation? Was it like multiple hours?
No, it was maybe an hour.
Oh, really? So it all happened quick.
Yeah, Tony talked to Jared, and we've got Jared's motor, and literally at that moment is when I meet Kenny and his son Gage and everybody from Kenny's shop, who were just standing there next to our pit, seeing what was going on. And Kenny's like, I'll go to my shop and get tools and an engine hoist. And I didn't even know him. We just met him. I'm like, hell yeah, wow. This guy's got a motor. Let's start ripping cars apart. And within an hour, we realized I couldn't use Jared's motor. The pacemaker guy's not going to be able to help us. and Freiberger calls me, and I try to talk him out of that, and and he was too cool to let me talk him out of that. I actually wish he had, because in hindsight, that would have saved some time.
It would have saved you some time, and you'd have then pulled that motor apart and realized. I do want to ask, how good was that beer that night? You guys are standing around in a circle. You've literally thrashed for hours and hours. How good was that beer?
Well, it was Sean Fink's beer, and his son Tyler's was extra good. I like when I get Sean's beer.
I like free and cold.
Yeah, I don't discriminate. I just like cold. Cold's good. Even if it's not free, just cold,
Right.
And it was pretty good, because that night, we felt pretty good. It was real late when I realized, I think I had talked to my wife on the phone, and she was like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "This is bad." I'm like, "This is so bad." I'm like, "I got a Gremlin ripped apart. My car is ripped apart. I don't have a day off after this is over to put these cars back together. They're going to throw us out of this parking lot." It was just all, it was all coming down on me. And I was like, "Oh my God, what have I done? I've got a camera crew sitting here. We have no episode." We have, in my mind, we have no episode, but thinking back, I'm like, no, we this is what people want to see. They want to see what really happened.
They want to see carnage, man.
Like, I don't set out to fail this much. It's just what happens a lot of times.
And then I remember you saying, you're like, "Man, I also feel bad because these guys stayed with me and helped me tear this car apart that now we're not even going to use."
Well, and that's the thing, is like, I'm standing around a group of people who have all busted their butts to rip these two cars apart. Tony doesn't want to quit. Nobody wants to quit, but Sean was like, none of the pulleys are lining up, and they're not going to. And I've talked to the engine builder, and he's like, "You're going to destroy the motor." And I'm just sitting there going, I just wasted so many people's time, because Sean and Tyler were still in drag week. They could have left 5 hours earlier, they're still sitting in a parking lot because they're friends, I got a lot of history with those guys. Sean and I have traded cars. Sean and I have done drag week together. Sean and I did drag week in 2014 when I was a staffer at Hot Rod. I didn't do drag week. His unlimited car wasn't ready, so he brought his 66 Suburban and a cooler full of beer and entered it in unlimited, and I ended up just riding with him the whole week, for most of the week.
Nice.
And that was how I met him, and we just turned out to be good friends. And so yeah, those guys are all standing around, and I'm just sitting there feeling like crap. And so I called it. I was like, "We're done. I will come back tomorrow. We'll put his car back together, and we're finished." And it wasn't until I was laying in bed at like 3 a.m. trying to figure out a way out of this that I was like, "Well, maybe I can fix my motor."
Yeah.
Now that we're not in a massive rush to make the next track, what's wrong with it? Can we fix it? So the next day, when I bore scoped it, like you said, you're in a hurry and you've got a mental fog going. I didn't realize the day before, all I did was look at the spark plugs. I didn't look at anything else. And all of them are oily, right? And I'm like, holes in pistons. What I didn't notice was none of them had any aluminum on them. So the next day when I bore scoped it, there was no holes in those pistons.
Right.
And then I talked to Pete Harrell, the guy who built the engine, and he was like, "Yeah, you probably knocked the ring tension out of it." And I kind of thought of that, but I've never actually done that. So even though I was thinking it, I'd never done it. And so I wasn't sure, but just listening to him on the phone, I was like, okay, we make it off real easy on this deal. And once we ripped the heads off and pulled the slug out of it, we had hope. And that's all we need. I just need hope. Let me know that I can finish something and I'm not going to quit,
Yeah.
Right. So that kind of leads me into my next bullet here. So we finished day one, day two comes, you get the Gremlin back together, you get Blasphemy's engine tore apart, and you find out it just needs rings. How much of a relief was it when you realized, like, hey, we didn't destroy this engine?
It was huge, because the truth is there's been 3 Hemis in that car, but the first 2 Hemis have been broken multiple times a piece for a lot of various reasons. I worked with an engine builder who just turned out to not be the guy I thought he was. So that accounted for 3 blowups of the second Hemi. And then the last blow up on this current Hemi, was my fault. We had the shift linkage in backwards at Rocky Mountain Race Week, and first gear was second gear, and second gear was first gear, and I didn't figure it out until it was too late. And so this Hemi that's in the car now is Hemi number 3, and it's a brand new Keith Black block. It's a brand new crank. The rotating assembly was everything was new. And so when I realized it's just rings and there's no metal in this motor, dude, I thought I won the lottery. Drag week for us is, we're out, we can't compete, we're way behind. This is still costing a lot of money, but at least I have the idea that I can fix it and take it home in one piece, and maybe cruise a little bit and maybe get to make a pass down the track. So that was huge.
Heck yeah. So then let's see here. Where are we up to? We're up to now you've got rings shipped to Indy, right?
Yep.
And you're heading to what was it, Snake Enterprise. So you get there, you spend the next 16 hours rebuilding the Hemi. So
Yeah.
that was not without complications itself. So there were some issues not having the right ring compressor.
Yeah.
How cool was it to be there and just go, yeah, we'll just whip one up, we'll just machine one, we'll go over here and watch them do that.
It was pretty wild because day 2 we spent putting Freiberger's Gremlin back together, which did not go well. We nearly broke the pickup off in the thing. I don't think it's in the episode, but the truth is when we fired it up, it didn't have a lot of oil pressure because the pickup was cracked. So we, when we were done there that night, we left knowing, okay, this car needs to go to Kenny's shop and Kenny needs to R&R the oil pan and the pickup off of it because it's still not right, which he did. And then when we went to leave, at like 2 a.m, our original plan was to drive straight to Indy. But when we went to leave, the brakes went out in the ramp truck in the parking. Yeah. I stepped on the pedal, puked fluid everywhere. And I was just like, oh my God. So we ended up staying the night on day 2 in Madison, getting up on day 3 and driving to Snake Enterprises. And at this point, I've never met Jake Sanders. He's just a friend of, Richie Crampton's and Johnny Lindbergh's. They connected me with him. And so when we get there, everyone's tired because I think we slept 3 or 4 hours that night. Everybody's tired. As soon as we get there, the drone flies into the tree.
That was hilarious.
And all I can think of was, oh God, we're going to lose the drone. It's not my drone. I'm like, oh no.
Somebody's going to have to climb up this tree and get this drone.
Yeah, but this place is magical. The drone comes right out of the tree. No big deal. We walk in there. There's CNC machines everywhere. And Jake Sanders is one of those rare individuals where he's like, yeah, come screw up my entire business day. No problem.
No problem. It's no big deal. We just got to get these blocks ready for Top Fuel cars on the weekend. It's no problem at all.
Yeah. And I mean, we used all his paper towels, all his brake clean. He wouldn't take my money. And when you get to the end and it's time to reassemble it, the ring compressor won't work. So he CNCs one. And what's not in the episode about that is so the bore on that motor is 450, I think. And one of his friends is a killer CNC programmer. So he's going to whip up a program for it. Except the only chunks of aluminum they have there are really big. So you're going to spend a lot of machining time to get it down to about 4.5 inches in diameter. Well, his buddy, the CNC programmer, and I feel bad, I'm spacing on his name, is like, I have a smaller piece of aluminum back in my shop. I think it's 6 inches. I'll run and go get it. So he leaves, and it takes a while, to get it and bring it back. They get it, chuck it up in the machine, run the program, and the cutter's not hitting the aluminum because the aluminum, he didn't measure it. He just grabbed it. It's way too small. And so now, Tony and I are like, we're pretty much out of stuff to clean. And we're waiting for this machine to whittle out this thing. So now they got to get a really big chunk of aluminum from Jake's shop,
man,
put it in there, and then start machining it. And so during the day, we thought we were going to get out of there at a reasonable hour, like midnight, But as it turns out, we fired that motor at like 4 a.m. the next day. And it sounded horrible. It sounded so bad. But we were so tired. I was like, whatever it runs, I don't care. Let's go sleep for a couple hours and come back. And so we did that. We came back, and as it turns out, when the guys were installing the crank trigger wheel, it got put on in the wrong place, and so the timing was just way off. Wasn't a big deal. So yeah, I think that part, half of that story is in the episode, the other half isn't, because I think it got cut for time.
Yeah.
Well,
So after 16 hours, like you mentioned, it's 4:35 in the morning by the time you're firing it up. Were you worried that with being tired and everybody's trying to rush that you might have overlooked something?
No, I was so tired, I didn't care. I was like, I don't care if someone dropped the 9/16 in this motor at this point. Let's just push the button and hear it make noise. If it's wrong, we'll fix it the next day. Like, this is how tired everybody was. Ryan Crossley, good friend, camera guy on Roadkill, and he's there helping. He was asleep on the floor, back up against the car with his camera in his hand like this. And all I had to say to him was, when he's dead asleep, was, Ryan, we're going to start the car. And he jumped off the ground. Like, ready to go. But then he nearly ran into a wall with the camera because he was so tired, Like, we were zombies. We were absolute zombies.
It's crazy because at that point, you've literally probably had 5 hours of sleep in 3 days, or 6 hours of sleep in 3. I mean, it's people don't understand that. So you get it all fixed. You guys you're packing up. I do want to know what was off limits for us to see that you guys got to see. How cool was that stuff?
Oh, not a lot. Just specifics to the combos that they don't want you to know certain things.
I think they were talking about the shoes with inside the blowers or something like that.
It's like cam specs to an engine builder, which, to be honest, that's ridiculous. You engine builders, stop pretending like it's gold. All right. It's like a pro stock team. It's why they cover up the runners on the intakes, so you can't see how long they are. It's stuff like that. There is a lot of witchcraft inside the plenum of those blower intakes, and that's what they don't want you to see, because apparently it works.
That's crazy. Well, then so you get all done. You find the gas station next to the Mother Road Grill. I can't remember what the name of that place was, but they were not ready for everybody. Motorheads. They were not ready for everybody that showed up.
Nobody called them to tell them Drag Week was coming to their restaurant.
Oh my, dude, I can't imagine. Like, I'm telling you, we were there in the first wave of people, and those waitresses were mind blown. What was happening?
Yeah, they didn't have enough staff. He was trying to call in people. It's weird. This has happened before on Drag Week. Like, we showed up to a gas station that was a checkpoint in 2019, and the owner of the gas station was so mad. Like, we were dead last. It was, I don't know, 2 or 3 in the morning when Tony and I got there, and that guy was so angry because of all the people that came there. And I'm like, it's a gas station. They bought everything you had. I don't know why you're angry about it, but he was
right.
But the owner of the restaurant that you're talking about, he was ecstatic. He couldn't have been happier about seeing all
that place was so cool, and they really had a great opportunity to really throw a big party there, because, dude, there was a huge bar in the back, and it had all this stuff that I don't think anybody used. We were cramming people into the front as when I was there, anyways.
Yeah, because he had no staff to serve the big area. By the time we got there, I don't know, it was 9 o'clock at night or something, maybe 10 o'clock, and it still took an hour to get food because there's just he couldn't get enough people to come in there and help out. It
was pretty wild. It looks like you caught Glenn Hunter Jr. in the Pro Rat 56, the red and white car, and then
I think was there.
Yep. I can't imagine the feeling of that.
It was huge,
thrashing like you guys have, and then to go to there.
It was huge because you finally, because for me, a lot of Drag Week, and I haven't been able to really enjoy this part of it, is the parking lot party, the gas stations, the checkpoints. The times I've done Drag Week, we've been so late every day that I'm a lot of times the last guy to the hotel. And so you miss all that. And so we finally get to this gas station, and I see just straight up legends standing at the gas pump. Like, Glenn Hunter's a hero of mine. Frank Romano's probably the only guy I'll ever let tattoo me again. Like, those dudes, for me, they're the reason I do Drag Week. is
Yeah.
just to be around and in the company of people like those guys. And so that was awesome, you know, and we were dead tired. By the time we got there, we weren't going to unload the car because we were too sleepy. And then we saw those guys and we're like, oh, we're cruising with those guys.
Yeah, we're cruising with those guys. And John Puckett, I think, was there too.
Yeah.
And so
Another legend.
yeah, Frank Romano and John Puckett were just on the Clutch Burners podcast with Bill and Rich.
I heard.
Yeah, that's such a great episode. I know you have all the time in the world to listen to podcasts, but it's really a good one.
I will make it a point to listen to John Puckett and Frank Romano talk about stick shift racing.
It's
I will learn some stuff, and I've bent Frank's ear so many times about how to drive a G-force, you know, and yeah, those guys are cool.
Yeah. So you unload the car, and then Eric, what's your comment here?
Yeah, so just like the story's gone, right? You unload the car, you're with everybody, you go, and we're gonna go street tune this real quick so we can keep driving. 2 miles away, something breaks. So at the time, you're thinking, you know, the rear end's broke, but what did it feel like? You're like, I busted my butt, we got the engine together, we're with everybody, we're about to go cruise, and then yet something again happens.
Yeah, it was a kick in the nuts because, you know, you're really tired, but you're just high on life because the car is driving beautifully. I'm leaning it out as we're going down the road. It's the engine's happy, everything's good, and homeboy clicks it in 6th gear, and just all hell broke loose. I thought the trans broke. I was like, what in the hell is that? You know, like, you know, because in my mind, we thrashed to put the car together. We screwed something up. You know, like we had to, clutch was out, throwout bearing, trans, all that stuff was undone. And so I thought we screwed something up. But when we were pulled over on the side of the highway with semis buzzing by, I laid on the ground and looked under the car and I saw the drive shaft, you know, and I'm like, well, all right, we didn't break the drive shaft. And as you push the car, it sounded like the rear end was busted. So that's what I thought, you know. And so we start driving back to the hotel. And it's really late. And I'm like, I'm not even going to try to make a post about this to see if someone's got another 9-inch. It's so late. But then I was desperate. I was like, I want to drive the car tomorrow. So I did. And, you know, the guys at Quick came to the rescue and brought us everything we needed, including stuff. Turns out we didn't need it all, like a rear end third member, because it wasn't broken. It was just a huge
needed U-joints. Yep. Man, it's I wish people could understand. It's just your brain doesn't work anymore. I know I've said that, and it's the brain damage of drag and drive, but like it's so hard because you've literally been on point for days now, for 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, the people
trying to get the car ready.
The people that win and that win more than once, they're a special breed of people. They are way more organized than me. They are better at this. They have their stuff together, and they're also very lucky because when you think about what you're trying to do at a drag and drive event, one screw, one nail on the last day, 500 yards from the drag strip ends your whole deal. You can be in first place, and you know, in 2019 we were in first place on day 3 and it broke first gear, and I'm like, we just broke first gear. Wow, you know,
doesn't make any sense.
And had there not been anybody in the parking lot that had another set of gears, shout out to Andy Starr, we'd have been done. You know, we would have just drove in second gear the rest of the trip. Was, you know, we were one drive away from winning that deal and broke first gear, you know.
Andy Starr, another big block stick shift Tri-5 car.
Yeah. And so, the people that win are, you know, for years I watched Larry Larson do this in his Nova with just a bag of tools and no trailer, you know. Think about the luck that it takes to get through not pulling your wheels off your car. He's the reason that I did Rocky Mountain Race Week last year, 2.0. And I took my Firebird and no trailer and left the tires on the car the whole trip just to see if I could do it, you know. And we did it, and it was really cool, but we were really lucky, you know. Some of the places we drove through, like at one point the route took us off road, you know. We were on a gravel road driving on those tires. So yeah,
Race Week was an interesting time for sure.
Yeah, that's another good event. I don't know if it's correct or not, but I heard there's like 23 drag and drive events this year, or 18
Yeah.
or something like that.
No, it's 23 as of right now. And we're looking, I've been called about 2 today that will be, potentially added. So you're looking at 25. And then King of the Open Road hadn't laid out there. So now these aren't, they're not national events, they're weekend events, 2 days of racing, overnight drive, stuff like that. That's what's filling a lot of the gap there. But we've got 7 national events for 23.
Yeah, and that's great because that just means
Yeah.
I'm not late for whatever one I finally decide to go to.
Well,
I might be able to show up to one and have actually driven my car. It'd be great.
Yeah. Well, and the cool thing is, like, if you do break at 1, you can end up, you have a chance to redeem yourself in 23. You're not waiting an entire year to come back out and make a hit at it.
You know who's cool? Robert Williams I think he did all 3 of the big ones last year.
Yeah. So Robert Williams in 21 did all 5.
All 5. I didn't know it was all 5.
Yep. And Steve Willingham did all 5 in the same 10-second Camaro. Robert Williams did 4 in Weapon X, the black Nova, and then did 1 in his Hellcat. It's why, I mean, he's a hero, man.
And the Guido brothers are just cooler than everyone. They drive from Canada to Florida and then drive all the way home after finishing. And
yeah,
he won. Didn't he win the stick shift class?
Yep. It's Sick Week last year. Coming back this year for it again.
And if you don't like him, he'll choke you out. He's the Chuck Norris of the drag and drive world.
Yes, that's exactly right.
The guy drives from outer space all the way to Florida, races, wins, drives all the way back to outer space. And
doesn't own a truck and trailer. Dude. So here's a great story. King of the Open Road, November this year. Hertz the car has an available trailer from Trevor Brandon with the GTR. Has GTRs going south to Texas. Trevor's like, hey, throw the GTO in the trailer and I'll take it home for you. He lives north of him. Guido's like, no, it's good. I'll replace a trans and the center section and drive the car home. Animal.
Yeah.
Animal. So,
freaking Norris, dude.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing. And then Cameron Thorpe, 2022, just one more shout out. He completed 4 national drag and drive events. It's impressive, man. That's got the maroon Volvo wagon, 740 wagon. I don't know if you remember it with the LSA in it.
Oh, yeah.
So he put almost 12,000 miles on his rigs doing drag and drive events last year. It's pretty crazy.
Volvo wagons are pretty much the coolest cars out there for me. After Sick Week last year, I was like, what are the rest of us doing? I
mean, we did
only
LS swap
3 or 4
wagon.
Yeah, when you're only 3 or 10 slower than a Pro Mod, dude, with a single turbo LS Volvo wagon, wow.
Yeah. And then freak Michael Morgan, he's insane. He posted a picture the other day with the decals. It's got a carbon fiber hood on it now. So hopefully we're going to see him come back out swinging for 23.
Oh, that's cool. Because I had heard he sold it. I'm glad he didn't. Because
it was for sale for a little while. It probably still is for sale. He's just going to keep working on it, though.
That's
cool. You know how we all do.
That car's awesome.
Yep. So a few more questions. How did Chase get in the passenger seat of the car on the last day, and how do I get in the seat? And
oh, dude, if the door's open, just get in. I don't care. I gotta be honest. One of my favorite things is to put little kids in that car, and just see their reactions. He was just standing there, and this chaps Tony's ass sometimes. Not the little kids, but. I have a bit of ADHD, and so I have the attention span of a carrot. So I'll be doing something, see something, and just go over here. And so I had something to do. We were working on the car, and then I saw Chase, and I was like, "You should sit in this thing with me," And so I did, and it made my day just to see him sitting in there. One of my favorite things is to take that car to my kid's school. Because when I do, one of the teachers there is really, really cool. And he will bring his class out, even though they have better stuff.
Oh, wow.
And I will put every one of those kids in the car. And their favorite thing is the fact that the steering wheel falls off. They love the steering wheel comes off. And so I'll let every one of them get in there and take the steering wheel on and off. And dude, it's so cool.
Yeah,
so,
awesome.
So have you taken the kids to school in it since you've been back?
No, they actually brought that up to me the other day. They actually, my oldest was like, "When are you going to take us to school?" I'm like, "Well, the problem is right now there's no back seat anymore for you kids, so I can only take one of you. And because I don't want them to fight over it, I haven't taken either one of them yet."
Well, dude, that's the best parenting advice ever, right there.
Yeah, the car. So over the last year, what I've done to that car is make it more of a street car, and I took the 5-speed out, put a 6-speed in. And my long-term plan is to redo the down bars on the roll cage so I can put a back seat in it. And
nice.
it's one of those, as soon as that happens, a seat goes in it and the car for me becomes way more streetable. Like the car's gotten heavier. It has a steel trunk on it now. The fiberglass one is off. And, you know, it's probably not as competitive as it was before, but I like it better, you know?
Yeah. Kevin Jackson had a good question there. I'll pull it back up here real quick. Yeah. What are you bringing to Drag Week in 23? Are you coming back?
Probably the caddy if I can make it to Drag Week. I have no idea what my work schedule looks like that far in advance. But I'm working on the caddy with the goal of taking it to some sort of drag and drive event this year. In fact, I don't know if you guys can see it or not, but I have an engine for it finally.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And that waiting for that engine was the big holdup on the build for that car. So now that I have it, I'm all excited about working on it, and it's a huge distraction because Blasphemy, there's like a list of 10 things that have to happen to that car before I can go test it again. And now that the motor for the caddy's here, Blasphemy is just sitting in the corner of the warehouse, leaking out of a lot of orifices. And I don't know when I'm going to work on that car again now. Honestly, don't know.
That's awesome. Well, Scotty here, what's your favorite track to race at, or favorite track to watch at? That's a good question too.
My favorite track to watch at is probably SGMP. I like the crowd there. I've gone to several of Ducks races there, and sitting in the stands and gambling is a lot of fun. And probably favorite one to race at is whatever one I'm not broken at. I've been really lucky. I've raced a lot of tracks. And I say racing, but I've driven at a lot of tracks for TV stuff. Probably the coolest one is Paradise Drag Strip in Calhoun, Georgia. It's an 8th mile old track. Like, I think it's from the early 60s, and it used to be a 1/4 mile track. They used to race NHRA national events there. And it's now 8th mile. But that track is uphill. Like,
wow.
Like more than Bristol. Like Bristol is uphill. I don't care what they say, you know, the workers say. That track is uphill. And I know this. I took a roll of tape and put it on the starting line, and it rolled back to the burnout box. Bristol is uphill. But Paradise is even more uphill, and it's so uphill that I can't stage my car there because it rolls backwards out of the beams.
Nice.
The guy that runs the starting line, Brett Gibson, will actually lean against my quarter and hold my car still because I'm not coordinated enough to hold the line lock and let go of it while dumping the clutch. And so yeah.
Nice. We have had a few people ask about Sick Week. You know, you and Freiberger competed last year. Just you gonna come back to that again?
Dude, it was on my calendar. I was gonna go, and they booked a roadkill shoot that same week, and there's no way we're gonna do another roadkill of the same thing we already did. And so I'll be in California while a lot of my friends, including Tony Angelo, is going to be at Sick Week racing his Firebird. And if you haven't seen that, that car is so cool.
That's awesome. We would definitely like to have Tony on, tell some of the stories as well, because you know he's an all around car guy. Like he does a little bit of everything. So I think he is great within the drag and drive community too.
Oh yeah, he's a good dude.
It'd be cool to hear his side of the story, you know, for the movie as well.
Oh, it won't be good for me. I'll tell you that much.
I was gonna say there were a few times it sounded like he was maybe being kind of hard on you.
Nah, I mean I deserved it 100%.
Well, man, you know.
No, he's actually a really good sport given everything. You know, I've not set out to put him through. It just happened. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, him going back over to Jared and them, that was a really cool, big win, I feel like, in my book here. All right, last question, then we'll let you go do your thing. I know it's getting late there in the Eastern time zone. Is Rubber Duck retired from Dragon Drives, or will it be back?
Probably be back, because that car done a lot of work to it recently in the quest to run an 8-second pass, and it hasn't done it. In fact, there's an episode of Faster with Finnegan coming out on the Motor Trend channel about trying to make that car run 8s. And even though I kind of just gave away what happened, you still need to watch it, because it's a lot like what happens at Drag Week. It is just this god awful snowball that just keeps going downhill and running me over. So, if the caddy's not ready and Blasphemy's not ready for something this year, I'll probably take the Duck out, because I love that car.
Sweet. Well, I think that probably answers that question of when would you do another Rocky Mountain Race Week?
I want to do 1.0, because I want to
so bad.
I want to see the Rockies.
Yeah.
That I hear 2.0 is the same route as 1.0 this year.
Yep. Same and stuff. Now I'm sure they'll move some of the route around, but I think it's going to be gorgeous.
Is it going to be snowing?
Probably in some parts, I would think.
The Cadillac will have a heater. That would be the one.
There you go.
The other cars, no heat. Hell, Blasphemy doesn't even have weather stripping in it. That would be miserable.
Yeah.
And the brakes.
Yeah, that'd be pretty rough. And then this is the last one, I promise here. Are you trying to build a different car for every National Dragon Drive event?
No, I just like too many things. Like I don't know. I really enjoy the building and then the initial driving and testing. And after that, I just want to build something else. So, but again, like I really haven't even started this build, and I went out and bought a Corvette, well, the body of a Corvette, because I want to go even faster, and that won't happen until this one's done. But yeah, I'm always thinking of the next thing.
Dude, I'm telling you, that Corvette has it's viral footage there for folks. I mean, everybody has an opinion about that car.
Oh, I know. But if they saw it in person, like, the more I look at that car, the more I think that car is kind of not necessarily an abortion, but it's for sure a 63 split window, according to the numbers on the car. But the windshield, I'm finding out, might be 67-ish. The doors might be 64. The cowl looks wrong for a 63. Like, that car either got hit or somebody customized it. And it's supposed to be a white car, but in the back of the car, if you pull up the carpet, the tub is red, like red gel coat. And so, I don't know. For me, I have no guilt about cutting that car up and turning it into a Dragon Drive car, because I just don't care.
That's right.
And the car's kind of trashy. Like, it's not a nice car.
Right up your alley, huh?
Yeah.
Right up my alley for sure. Yeah. Well, dude, I want to thank you so much again for being here. I mean, if people don't know who you are that are watching this, they're under a rock. I mean, obviously, you can, if you type in Finnegan on any social media, you're going to pull up, I think, you all of your stuff. So we definitely appreciate you coming on. You have a huge following. I hope some of those folks watch this and enjoy what we've talked about. I know I have. It's been a great time. So.
Yeah, and for those of you that don't know what we talked about for the last 2 hours, I made what amounts to a movie, a 2-part movie on YouTube. Go look for Finnegan's Garage, and you can watch it there. It's all about Drag Week, or at least what happened to me and Tony Angelo at Drag Week.
Yeah, it's really amazing, and big praises to you for I'm sure paying Chris a lot of overtime to put that together for 3 months. I can't imagine. Maybe we'll have a conversation with him at some point in the future too, because
he's
just
got
the hours and hours and hours. We've all sat in front of computers and edited videos and things like that. It's crazy. I can't imagine trying to come up with all of that footage and put it all together from all the different cameras that were there and drones and all that stuff.
Yeah, he killed it. That whole crew killed it. So I'm very lucky.
That's for sure. Well, man, thanks a bunch. I really do appreciate you hanging out.
Yeah, thank you.
I owe you a beer some next time we see you.
Oh, dude, I'll come back anytime you guys want. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Thank you very much.
All right. See you guys.
See ya.
Dude, what a fun episode. Holy crap.
This was awesome.
I mean, two amazing dudes coming on here, hanging out. The one thing I did miss was some beers. I didn't get any beers, so we're going to change that. I think maybe moving forward, we'll do the first hour will be no beer, and then the second hour is going to be I'm going to drink a beer or two. So,
absolutely.
We'll tell everybody where to find you. I'll tell everybody where to find us, and then Mike is still backstage. I'd love to take about 3 minutes of his time to ask some stuff.
Yep, absolutely. I'm Eric White. My channel is 815 LSX Swaps. You can see us do LS swaps there. You can see the two cars behind me. The new channel is going to be Motorsports Paparazzi. That's going to be all of our event coverage. It's already up on Facebook, so you can head over, like that Facebook page. I'll be putting all PRI content up there, and yeah, that's pretty much it for me.
Awesome. Well, guys, you know who I am, Mike Narks, run dragandrive.com. We have a ton of really, really cool stuff coming. Obviously, I'm going to be attending Sick Week. Lots of coverage will come from Sick Week. I promise it changed our life last year. I intend to do that again for 2023. And we just really look for a ton of stuff coming up. If you didn't catch earlier in the episode, we're going to start our Sick Week racer coverage beginning next week with interviews and conversations with racers for that event. I'm reaching out to last year's champions to see who is coming back, 1, 2, and 3, who's coming back. Would love to have some of those folks on. If you are going to be at Sick Week, please comment in the chat if we are still live for the next 2 or 3 minutes. And then down below after that, all the links to everybody's channel will be down in the full description that will drop in this video later tonight. Guys, thank you so much again. I really, really do appreciate everybody that's come and hung out for the entire more than 2 hours we've spent here tonight. So we'll see you next time, guys.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.